10 years in internal, in IEB. Accountability, it's some of who you know, some of who you are. Everyone's not treated the same. You can have one person do something and someone else do something 10 times more erroneous than what the other person did. Depending on who that person is, very little will happen to him or her. The other person, they could be fired, dismissed. I've seen, one of the things I did in internal affairs was review all the criminal cases that came in. I would sit there, my job was to read them every day, and if there was a problem that I seen in there, I had to let the investigator know. There were so many problems in a lot of these cases when you're sitting there and read them, and it was so unfair with in some of the ways how people were treated. So the accountability, to me, my 10 years experience, it's not there. And I can only speak for myself from what I see. It is not there.
After incidents, rioting, demonstration, praying, dying, prayer vision, what's next? Today, we're going to map a resolution as to that could affect here, Jackson, Tennessee, and also the nation. And the foundation that we're going to use, we're going to go to our Declaration of Independence. We're going to look at some publications, not look at publications, we're going to discuss those publications that were put together by people that paid by taxpayers. They were put together by people that was in the Justice Department, police officers, citizens, different community organizations, and what they said when they put together this publication was that if we should do these things, we will be able to resolve the problem and improve the relationship between police and community. So that's the occasion.
I too believe that all lives matter, but I also believe all lives cannot matter until Black Lives Matter. And I think that people misunderstand what Black Lives Matter really means. No one has ever said in the activist community that Black lives are the only lives that matter. But they have not mattered because we're the ones being killed on the street every day by each other. And also law enforcement has a hand in that. And I think we have to stop being afraid, black folks.
Say it.
To be real, to be open, to be honest. Traveling around this country, and I just left Ferguson and St. Louis and Chicago. We are losing young black folk with their hands up, giving up, running away. And what we're hearing too often at 13, 12 years old, and in one case at the hands of Detroit police, a 7-year-old little black girl. Black folk, unfortunately, are not seen as children. And what our community needs, and I told y'all to forgive me at the very onset, I am not ever politically correct, because politically correct ain't got us nothing. Except locked out. So here's what we believe, and we'll let the panel deal with it. I believe that one of the ways we get police departments in check is we withhold our future councilmen federal funding from police agencies that don't engage in de-escalation training. When you sit in a car and say, I have a gun permit, and you're told to give me your driver's license, and you're shot dead live on Facebook, and then y'all come tell the folks, show us respect. Y'all excuse me, and I'm going to be saved after I say this. When the hell do we get respect? You lost a young man by the last name of King in this community. Where's the fight for justice for a 13-year-old? In Cleveland, where's the justice for Tamir Rice, a young boy playing in the park? We always kissing up to somebody. Y'all forgive me, I told y'all I'm not that kind of person. I don't kiss up to nobody. And let me confess something that I don't always confess. I'm an ex-cop. And what I realized is I couldn't change the system from the inside. Because too often we on the inside become what our counterparts are. Before a policeman goes off, oftentimes he shows and displays something at the water cooler. And his friends say nothing. That's what I meant earlier when I said in the black community, we learn how not to snitch from the police that don't tell on each other. Now we can politic our way out of it if we want to. Y'all can keep going to church and pray if you want to. But those are not the things that are making the change. Prayer is essential. I'm a preacher. I'd be the first to say it. But faith without action. I didn't write that. Somebody else did. A season of nonviolence. And that's what's really important, because I want my young folk to respect police. But I want our police officers and our mothers and grandmothers to command respect by treating everybody the same. Open.
My name is Matthew Fogg. I'm a retired Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal with 32 years of service, U.S. Marshal Service. I am also an analyst, guest analyst for CNN and MSNBC on law enforcement issues. I'm a former SWAT team member, led a SWAT team, worked out of Washington, D.C., and also won a major lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice for race discrimination in 1998. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Matthew Fogg. I'm a 32-year veteran U.S. Marshal Chief. My career, I think, started because when I was a young kid, I grew up in Washington, D.C. I came up in the civil rights movement. I had a chance to see Dr. King come to Washington, D.C. I had a chance to see the dogs and all of the things that was happening during the civil rights movement. I think a particular thing impacted me, making me join law enforcement, was when I was a kid, I couldn't get into Washington Boys Club because for whites only, I didn't understand it. Me and the white kids, we played together, me and my brothers and us, we went up to the door, they'd stop the black kids and let the white kids go on in. One day I went home to my mom and I said, Mom, what is that all about? And she's trying to explain to me. I'm about 9 years old, and she's like, and at the time, then all of a sudden tears rolled down her face as she's trying to explain. She said, don't you ever let nobody tell you you're not as good as any other kid. I think from that experience, and then not still really understand, but then going away to college. Then before I got to college, I got locked up as a youth, as a witness to a crime. I watched what an I was inside the store. Some boys robbed this little boy. You know, just a little fist fight. Took his money. Officer said, who knew me, who worked at that police station as a summer youth employee the year before, he said, Fogg, just call the cops, let them take a story. They came out, they took a report. About 2 months later, they got the report mixed up downtown and got our names as a suspect. Me and one other guy was a witness. They came to our house, locked us up for robbery. I'll never ever forget it because it had a major impact on my life. Came into the house, shotguns, everything outside, everything that I'm gonna be doing in the future. Carried us out of the house, didn't know what was going on. Got down to the station, it was a white detective. Finally, when he realized he made a mistake, he goes away, he comes back, he tells me, he said, look, he says he still wanted me to say I did it. And I was totally blown away. And after that incident, what he ended up doing, he put me in jail. I had to go into jail until, that was a Saturday morning, stay in jail till Monday when I got out. That experience of being in that jail cell, everything I lived through, when I got on that marshal service later on in life, got that record cleared up. When I got on the marshal service, I think that's what drove me towards law enforcement, because I wanted to make a change. I wanted to see a difference. And when I got on the marshal service, it's a great job. I did all kinds of dragnet operations. I worked with New York City, Miami, Seattle, Washington, and overseas. Did a lot of law enforcement operations. I worked fugitives. I tracked people from all parts of this country. But I saw a lot of inner makings of law enforcement. And as this officer just said about the inside, when you start to see how it operates on the inside, you see the improprieties and what's going on. You begin to realize I was born on this job to serve and protect the people. So I spoke out against him. When I did, all guns turned to bear on me. I ended up winning a major lawsuit, but going through that process of who's going to be on your side when it comes time to go to court, who's going to tell it like it is, that was a very difficult process, but I made it through, and I won one of the major lawsuits. But having to go through that process, it has now made me an activist today. I'm an activist for the people. I stand up, and I agree with this officer here. A lot of officers know the bad apples. They know the bad cops. The problem is when you speak out, what happens to that officer who speaks out against the bad cops? That's what happened to me. That's what happened to my white colleague. Several other folks I know on the job, their careers were totally destroyed because they spoke out. So we have to be concerned about that. Hopefully that's one of the things that we will address here. Thank you very much.
I'm very outspoken, I'm very transparent, and I believe in telling it like it is because that's where I come from. My biggest thing is I know we talk a lot about Black Lives Matter. My father is still out there on the streets, probably still out there doing God knows what, running around, shooting folks, robbing, I don't know. He's probably doing all kind of stuff. But one thing I can say is we talk a lot about, police officers killing and beating African American men. But one thing I can say is, everything starts at home. Everything starts at home. We cannot be so quick to jump on a police officer when we have black folks killing black people. We're quick to jump on a police officer kicking a black man in the face, but we're not quick to jump on that black man shooting another black man between his eyes.
We fight against that too, my brother.
I mean, this is the thing that I'm talking about. That, as being a man of God and me being a man of faith and a minister in the Church of God in Christ, which is the largest African-American Pentecostal church in the Church of God in the world, one thing that I have to say is that God, and one thing I love about dogs, when they have puppies, they don't see color. You touch that puppy, you're going to get bit. And same thing about any other animal. It might come out different colors, but you harm them, you're going to get hurt. And that's the same way with God. We're all his children, and we're made in his image. So, whether you're black, whether you're white, I'm not just trying to talk politically like you hear other people talking, but, I believe all lives matter. Even with this Black Lives Matter, I understand the movement. I understand where it's coming from. But, when I look at people like Martin Luther King, he did more than just protesting. He did more than just rally people up. He actually took action. He actually met with these leaders and sat down and talked to them. And if they don't want to sit down and talk to you, elect them out of office. Get somebody that's actually going to get in there and try to make a difference. I've never seen justice without law and order. And you're never going to see justice without law and order. These police officers are here to protect and serve. And last but not least, back to the Black Lives Matter thing, my question to them is, what are you doing besides protesting? What are you actually putting back into your community other than protesting? And I'm not beating no one down, but you have to put more than just protesting back in your community. Not every time a black man gets shot, we got to go protest. No, get out there and do something other than that.
Oh, it's being done, my
Or
brother.
when a black man goes down, get out there and knock on doors. Get out there and run
It's
for
being
office.
done.
Start a business up. Try to get people employed.
People are doing that.
And instead of, and this is the big thing I can't
that
stand,
just doesn't
these
get the publicity
politicians
that the other stuff gets.
and if I can say this, it might take the mic away from me, but politicians like to go to these food giveaways and give people food. I understand all that, but I'd rather teach a man how to fish rather than giving him a fish.
That's correct too.
I want to actually help people, give them some money that they can depend on, a stable income coming in. This is how we solve these problems with violence, drugs, crime. It's all about bringing good paying jobs back to our community. And we're only going to do this by getting
that's what's
someone
needed, too.
in office that's
right.
actually for us. That's how I'm talking. That's how I'm going to say it just like it is. I don't go nowhere else saying one thing, come back saying another. I say it just like it is.
That's where it's supposed to be.
I'm not all for this black, blue, white, whatever. All lives matter in the eyes of God, and I'm for everybody. That's just me. I'm sorry.
And that sounds good. And as we go to God's messenger, let me say this. Anybody who says that they look at me and don't see color is telling a lie.
Say it.
You got to be honest in
God
this,
made it
y'all.
all different.
Every time somebody breaks into a store, every time somebody steals a car, the first thing that goes out to the police is what color they were. It was a black guy. It was a white guy. I do not believe that God put us here in different colors to forget color.
Right.
I believe he put us here to appreciate one another
Yes.
no matter our color.
Yes.
in defense, as I go to God's messenger of the Black Lives Matter movement, they are doing something.
They are.
They do run for office. They do sit at the table. The problem has been this. They don't get invited often to the table.
Right.
Until our laws match our rhetoric, we are failing them. So God's messenger in your ministry, and I know it's a very unique ministry, and a ministry we certainly appreciate it, how do we reach and teach our young people without this? Because here's what young people are saying about us. Those of us who represent the church have become fake, false, and phony. Those of us who don't engage in truth-telling have become a part of the problem. How do you change that narrative? See, and I know I may not get invited back next year, but I believe in being honest and being real. I've started 3 initiatives with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department right here in Ohio, where we were working to bridge the gap between the sheriff's deputies and kids in the community.
Right.
But that same year, there were 16 deaths in the county jail, all attributed to suicide. So I'm saying we give it rhetoric, but are we really honest about what we're saying? What do you think?
Yeah, African Americans' lives matter. See, I know the terminology. I'm very particular on terminology. I'm not into the Black Lives Matter, the White Lives Matter. I'm into, yes, all lives matter, and the African American lives definitely matter. And the reason why that's coming up because of what we see on television. We see some cops, not all cops, some cops at that split second, like he was saying, some of these other cops have made decisions, in my opinion, according to what I see. I'm not the person with the gun, but according to what I see, there were some wrong choices. There's some lives that, innocent lives that should have been handcuffed and then brought to jail, but not shot and killed. But all lives matter. The cops' lives matter as well. But the pain that the mothers are dealing with, you know, kids being killed, husbands being killed, when they did this, when they walked away or was running away, when the cop is saying, well, he's fighting with me and he's shooting. Not all cops do that, but those particular cops that did that, they should be punished. Just like the African-American man, if he robbed a store or he killed another African-American man, he needs to be punished as well. So I'm into all lives matter. I'm into African-Americans' lives matter. And for it to change, I think y'all all kept saying it starts at home. We need to teach our children to respect authority, to respect each other, to respect self. And also for the cops, the police officers, of course, training and a better relationship, because it's the media. The media is putting that stuff out there over and over. Let's see if the media put out how me and the cop, the sheriff, hugged each other. Let's see if that goes somewhere. Right, let's see if the media put this out. Right, they need to see, it's the image thing. If you keep getting fed stuff, faith comes by hearing. Faith comes by hearing. You keep seeing that stuff and seeing that stuff, then when an African-American drives up next to a cop, he's already feeling uncomfortable because of what he's already seen on the tube over and over and over again. So it's how we portray it in the media.
Absolutely. Let's go here with that. I think that's a good assessment. The only thing the media can put out is what they see. Doing one of these forums with another group of police officers in another city, they said the first question always seems to be, and now they got black folk doing it, what about us killing each other? We got some homework that needs to be done in our community. Y'all hitting it right on the head. That's right. But because my living room is dirty does not give you the right to dump your trash in my front yard.
Say it.
And if you do it as a prophet, preacher, I'm going to address it. Not because it's popular, but because it's righteous. We must teach our children to respect one another, to love one another, to care about one another. But am I the only one here who's been seeing so much lately, especially in the celebrity community, where they say, I have a son, a black son, and I've had to have that talk about engaging with police, because here again, you can't erase it and make it go away because it feels good.
Right.
Raise your hands. We do that. Grab the steering wheel. We do that. Some folks say take off and run. We do that. We are literally watching Laquan McDonald and others being killed walking away from a bad situation. When elected officials began to insert laws and get concerned about these things, I think there's a change that can come, and they can come ahead, but it's outside my pay grade. but it doesn't mean I don't fight for change. So when you talk about people lobbying in the street for change, Dr. King did do that.
Yeah, he did. He also did.
Until he got invited in the White House.
Come on.
And then after the meeting, he went back on the street and engaged in lunch counter demonstrations.
People forget about that part of Dr.
What
King.
then do we do? Because here's what we do with Dr. King in both communities. We try to mold him into what we want him to be and what fits our purpose at the moment. Dr. King was a radical.
Yeah, he was.
Dr. King fought for change and was relentless in his fight. So I can't turn on young people who are involved in Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter movement grew out of, if you think back, the situation with George Zimmerman
And Trayvon Martin.
and the killing of Trayvon Martin. Black Lives Matter doesn't mean all lives don't matter. We got to quit playing the game.
Right.
We get hung up on words instead of meaning.
Right.
All lives do matter when Black lives matter, but you can't continue to treat us as second-class citizens and say all lives matter. And you cannot play on violence on the inner city to say they're justified in killing us. Deputy, I'm trying to make sure I got you right. McDowell. Deputy McDowell, no one is more interested in seeing relationships grow. I believe in that. I would love to see a number of my young folk grow up to join, whether it be the sheriff's department, police department. How do we fix that narrative? And as a deputy now, what role individually? Because here's the thing, the kids really don't see the sheriff.
They see the deputies.
They see y'all.
Right.
They don't see the chief of police too much. Ms. Jacobs, I think it's Chief Jacobs, if I'm not wrong. They don't see her. But they see the officers they come in contact with. So if they get treated like I'm always a suspect, how do we fix that to keep you safe and to make our young people feel safe at the same time? Do you have any suggestions on that?
Well, first off, I want to touch on base. You said that kids have to have respect for each other. I believe kids have to have respect for themselves before they can have respect for anybody else. Like, how many kids in our society have no respect for themselves? But then, you know, they require respect of others. First, you got to have respect for yourself. Mm-hmm. And as far as, you know, getting that bondage, it's what we do on a daily basis. You talk about, you know, all the cops this, all the cops that. Cops are people too. All right? And, you know, not all cops are the way that is being described. And the way that we can break down this relationship is, you know, by our cops that get into the community, that stop, you know, when they're patrolling, they're throwing the football with the kids. All right, you never see a video on that, but how many times a week does that happen? A lot, I can tell you. It does happen a lot. You might see a quick Facebook video of that cop throwing a football with a kid that's out in the street, but then you'll never see it again. And the minute something happens in our community, something bad happens and it's a police officer's fault, then that's brought up, and how long is that on them? Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I'll use even this to a point. It's just like all these terroristic events that we have, like an active shooter event we have here in society. How many times do you see the people that actually did something to save people? How many times do you see them heroes? But how many times do you see the gentleman that killed 12 animals and that's why he killed all them people? It's the same thing. It's what people portray through the news media.
I have mainly a statement. I grew up in a household with a police officer who retired and then became a deputy
sheriff, yeah.
who was also a Republican. I love that man as if he's my own father.
We're praying for him too, but go ahead.
However, he has some issues too when it comes to this. He's a lock him up, go away to keep type of person. I grew up, my mother worked at the police department, retired from the police department. I went to New York when I was 19, believing that police were just the greatest people on earth. And I still don't think, I'm not even the type of person who thinks that all the police are bad. I'm not that person.
She gets on me.
I'm not that person. But I went to New Jersey as a 19-year-old, going to the Apollo because my friends were able to go to the Apollo. And I got stopped. And marijuana and cocaine was planted in my car. And that changed my mind.
And it's still happening.
It changed my mind. But I still came home and gave everybody a chance. But then I continued to see things happen over and over and over again. We work with the sheriff. Love the man. Praise the man. gave him props over everything.
Brought him in charge.
We did block parties, did all kind of things with the county sheriff. We even felt so strongly about our relationship with the sheriff that we went to him and said, Sheriff, there are things going on in your jail. Sheriff, there are things going on that you don't know about. People are being killed, people are being harassed. And what the sheriff told us, the sheriff who was always working with us, who then said, oh no, I don't have those kind of people to work for me. And now you know what is happening? It's coming to light now a few years later. These very things that we tried to help the sheriff out with that he would not have to be dealing with right now if he had taken care of it. So what I'm saying is, just because we get up here and talk about this, we're not saying, oh, we hate you, we hate you. We appreciate the service that you, yes. This is an open dialogue. This is an open dialogue.
Thanks, Kay.
That's all I'm saying.
Amen. He's here from Tennessee, and he said he's got something to say, and I believe you got to let young folks speak. That's right. Sometimes we get in trouble because young folk feel like they're not being heard.
Exactly.
Every now and then we need to hear what they are saying.
Exactly.
Go ahead, my young brother.
So some of y'all might know Derek Brown, and I am sick and tired of these police treating us this way.
That's right.
I don't want this to happen all the time. I don't want this to happen.
That's right.
These police act like we're some dumb people, like we don't understand nothing.
That's right. Speak.
But they stupid.
Hello?
Right.
Tell the truth.
That's right.
They are savage.
That's
animals.
right.
Right.
That's right.
Savage animals.
That's right.
Trying to treat us like we are nothing.
That's
Right. Tell that truth.
And I'm here with Toya.
All right.
I will support her every day.
You better
All right, little man. All right.
You better
Something real quick.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, John.
Yes, young brother.
Go ahead, man.
Hey.
If any of y'all know me, y'all know I'm not a crier like that, and I'm not, but with all the stuff I've been through,
Come on.
I never really let anybody see the tears, but
It's okay.
I'm fighting it back
It's
right
all
now.
right, my
No,
brother.
baby, let it flow. We right here.
All right.
We got
All
you.
right.
Let it flow.
We with you.
Come on, AJ.
We got you. Let it flow.
Every day, in the morning I wake up and I hope my life don't get taken like some of these kids out here, man.
You should not live in fear.
I can't take it. I'm tired. I'm tired of going to marches. I love it. I love coming together, people. I'm tired of it.
Come
I'm
on
tired
here.
of waking
Come
up every
on.
morning scared of this.
Come
I'm
on.
tired
That's right.
of fighting back tears because we don't deserve this. I go to school like everybody else. I do my best like everybody else. A lot of these kids who got killed, amazing students in school.
That's right.
And they still shooting us down.
Right.
They try to make excuses like we criminals every day. They try to paint us as criminals every day.
Every day.
And I do my part. But they look at me and they want to shoot me and they want to take me down every day. So all these people out here who keep walking past and keep acting like we ain't right here, they keep acting like they got something more important to do.
Come on, son.
Tell it.
That's right.
Tell
You
it.
better speak on that thing.
Tell
I
it.
need y'all to think about your life real quick.
That's right.
And think about what we fight for. Because this is something that's not just an individual going through it. This is not something just a couple people going through it. Our lives is at stake all the time, every hour of the day.
Yeah. That's right.
Every day.
These police officers they're gonna close this down. They're gonna put up they're gonna block the streets and make sure they ain't over here, they don't want to support us, okay. But we need y'all out here too.
That's right.
Y'all from Zion, why y'all ain't out here? Why y'all ain't out here?
Right.
Why y'all ain't fighting with us?
Right.
You can knock at their door anytime.
Hello?
I don't want to see another money shed tears because of this. I don't want to shed tears because of this.
Keep not.
Now everybody, I need y'all to get loud. I need them to hear us. Don't be embarrassed. Stand up. Speak for you what you believe in.
Right.
So when I say no justice, you say no peace. I want everybody on this block to hear.
right.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No racist.
Police.
No racist.
Police.
Come on, get that brother.
Amen.
Did you have a remark?
Yeah, I got a question for Sheriff. In light of like what's been happening like over the last couple years about Black Lives Matters, the cops killing, or whatever the situation is where gun violence has caused a life, or whether it's a black life or a white life. What is being done? I mean, I know your presence being here today shows what you're doing back in the community, that I know it needs to change. When I've got nieces and nephews that are 15 and 16, they need to change. They need to change that perception of like the police are bad. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because when I was growing up, we went to the police to get our bike license, or we went to the police, to the fire department to get our license for our bikes. So they was there as our friend. Not now. This generation now, I mean, there's been some different drinks in the water here lately from the teens that are here now. But what I'm saying is, the relationship needs to be built back. That stop by some of their, not that you want to patrol out to do, just build a rapport back there, because it's gotten to a thing. I don't want my nieces to look at the cops as a bad person. I mean, there was one incident that happened where I don't know what the circumstances. If I feel I'm threatening my life, if I was a cop, someone pulled a gun on me, I would shoot them too. I mean, I gotta come home at night too. You know what I mean? Just like a fireman, when they go fight a fire, they gotta come home at night too. So it ain't. And then so when I go to these meetings, Black Lives Matters, they want to boycott a certain store because they don't. They want to boycott a store that supports me. Walmart gives me almost like a $25,000 grant to do my event here. You know what I mean? So for them to have me come into a meeting, they want to boycott Walmart. I said, why? This is what Walmart does in the community. You can't hold them accountable because you don't see them plastered on the wall that they donated. You know what I mean? But you know what I'm saying?
We're going to ask the deputy to respond.
Okay.
And go ahead, Tyler. Say what you want to. Go ahead and respond to that.
All right. Well, first off, you talked about, asked us what we do in the community, everything like that. We are in the community almost every Saturday of every week. We're doing events like this, all right, around Central Ohio, all of Franklin County. We go to the very top point of Dublin, all the way down to the very bottom point of Canal Winchester. We are also in the schools throughout the year. We are in Columbus Public because Columbus Police dropped their DARE program, all right. We are in most of every school in Franklin County, trying to connect with these young kids. We teach them, it's called Operation Street Smart. All right, it teaches them about violence. It teaches them about police itself and what we expect when we show up on scene. All right, we also teach them about drugs. We talk about every type of drug there is, so these kids can have knowledge, can educate themselves, so if they see it, they know, hey, I need to go the other way. We do that in every 5th grade and 7th grade. All right, and now just this year we started doing it in high schools, 9th graders. But you can only plant the seed, and somebody else has to come along and water it.
Thanks a lot.
This is Apostle Natalie Young. I grew up in this community. We lived at 169 North 18th Street. My grandmother raised a senator in that house at 169 North 18th Street. My aunt worked at Ohio Bell, if anybody remembers.
I remember that.
My mom went to this school. They all went to this school. And I just want to say, my stepfather was the personnel manager of the Columbus Symphony, and I got rebellious. I didn't want to walk their path. I didn't like rich people. I'm just going to tell you, I didn't like rich people. They were snobby, and I just went wild for a very, very long time. And the thing about that is what I want to say is, the police policed me, and they should have. But I didn't get so wild that I killed anybody. I didn't get so wild that I didn't follow the rules when I did have to get in a confrontation. But you always get arrested in Ohio. You just forget about it. You get in a confrontation, you get arrested, then you get out of it. And I was just blessed to always get out of it, okay? It just happened. And one day, they saw something in me, and they all started to support me. And I'm just saying, because we keep talking about how police. They could have killed me. They could have. Many times I could have been hurt. My life could have been snuffed out. The people I hung around, but I was always smarter and did better. And as we grew, I got this vision in me, and I kept saying, this is for my community. I got it, and I took it to Florida. I made it grow in radio, and I said, this is still for my community. And I refuse to preach on a pulpit. I still won't do it. I won't go under a pastor so they can tether what I say, Mr. McCord.
Come on.
I won't go inside where nobody can see it and nobody can hear it. You got to do it out here where the people are, where they believe you care, because most people don't think pastors care.
That's right.
They don't think, an evangelist cares. I cared enough to pour the money back into this community, even though they still didn't trust us enough to show up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But as long as we keep staying out here and saying we're out here for you, and as long as the sheriffs keep coming out and saying we're out here for you, we're here to help you, Natalie. That's what they said. We're going to help you. When Corporal called, we're going to help you. We're going to be there to help you. Did you call the police? No. They said, why? I don't want them. I want you. Because I know that they're warmer. I know that they're going to talk to you. I know they're going to do a complete investigation. I know it's not going to be cocky. But I did invite every single police officer in this neighborhood at every single scene for the last 4 months. If I saw a tape, if I saw them block a street, I'm handing them cards. Make sure you watch us. Make sure you're here. We need you. But because they have to know we're loved too. That they're loved too, right? Yes. So I love on them. Yes. I just love on them. But they're so proud, Dr. McCoy and Kyron, that I did better. So they're also helping me. They said, somebody's roto-dialing this event. I don't know who that is. They said somebody put it all in the Y. I didn't do that. See, that's what I'm saying. Wow. So the community is behind me pushing.
Yes.
Even though they're doing it silently, they're still helping. And that's what matters. And that's why I stay straight. That's why I stay off drugs. That's why I stay off the streets. Because they're pushing me silently, waiting for the grand results. Right. Even if the little steps, they're still doing it. And we appreciate it. I really, really do. I mean,
we need to give her a hand. I'm just so grateful, RH. Do we have a question from one of our...
It's not a question, it's a statement. You made a statement that immediately was the cop stomping that guy in the face, that we jumped on it. But when some black person kill a black person, that it's down low, however you wanted to say it. But you have to understand something. I look at it like this. If our leaders and the one that's supposed to protect me is stomping somebody in the face, I got a problem. Because him and me can have a beef and he shoot me. But when I take somebody like in a church, and a leader that is supposed to be on my side and protect me and know he mistreats somebody else, how is I supposed to accept the fact that he's going to treat me right?
Absolutely.
That is not a statement. And I will let you know this statement. It takes a village to raise a child. It's going to take the nation to protect them all.
All right. I heard our city council person, I'm claiming him already, make the statement that he was a preacher. So my question is, in most other communities, I won't call them white since we don't like to deal with reality, black and white. In other communities, they live next door to a councilman. Mm-hmm. They live down the street from a police officer. Yeah. They live down the street from someone in authority they can go to. Quite frankly, historically, the black church has been the only entity that we could run to when we see folk getting stomped in the face by the police. Where's the church in a time of crisis?
First, to answer her question, her statement, reply to your statement, I didn't say, I was one to call out Officer Zachary Rosen for stumping the young African-American in the face. Now, I didn't say that was right for him to do. Now, that is wrong, and I will call out and say that is wrong. But we also need to call out, the other thing too, the black-on-black crime. That's higher than police officers killing African-Americans. And we first got to solve that before we try to solve this other thing. I'm not saying let's turn a blind eye to it, but we also got to solve this other thing right here. We have a lot of issues in our community.
Not either or, you gotta do both.
And we have to bring our community together so we can get this thing done. Now, one thing I do want to say, where is the church at? Well, you know, when we read the Word of God, we are the church. And you know, it's not the building itself.
I'm sorry, where's the leadership in the church?
Where's the leadership?
That ought to be in the community.
Well, when I talk to pastors and leaders in the church, they say about the same thing I say. You know, we often talk about a lot of other things, but we're not talking about, you know, as we call ourselves outspoken, we're not talking about that thing right there. Black folks is killing our own.
Yeah, just to piggyback what you just started, how do you feel about the technology that's being used? And is it helping? Is it hurting police departments around the city and around the country? I mean, there's a lot of software out there now. A lot of people are pushing. Like I know I've read of one that's actually trying to identify gang activity in certain neighborhoods. The DA's offices, they're picking up on all this stuff. They're pushing a lot of stuff out there. I mean, how do you feel about technology? Is it helping you guys? Is it hurting? I mean, where are you going with this? I mean, a lot of stuff is we talk about community policing, but there is a lot of numbers out there that suggest that, as I was listening to a radio program, blacks do commit more crime, and you can't punish people for something that they haven't done or are intending on doing. Does data help? Does technology help? I mean, where are we going with this?
No, blacks do not commit more crimes. We target blacks. If I go and I target your neighborhood, like I said, the war on drugs, if I go over there and lock all black folks up, it's going to look like all the numbers read that you commit more crimes. I know we target. So what I'm saying to you is, hey, you go over to Yale, I'm sure, what's this? This is John Jay. I'm sure you could walk through here and find people smoking a joint. What I'm saying is, you know, it's just where we were going a lot of times to go after the drug dealers and go after, because that's where most of your crime is when they start taking stats they talking about in drugs. When you start talking about serious crimes, and I'm sure, yeah, we do shoot them and, you know, carry guns and all that stuff in black neighborhoods. But again, this stuff is happening everywhere. But the bottom line is, you have to understand is how we target it. Now, let me just say this. When you're talking about technology, hey, look, we talking about body cameras for police officers. That's good technology because that tells us, that gives us more of a visual now of what really went down. But as far as technology, I don't think you can ever get enough technology. I think technology is good when you start talking about if we could determine how many officers, for example, are shooting or brutalizing people, or we can determine how many people, gang warfare, anything that we can do to fight crime. If technology will help us, I think that's a good thing. The problem with technology, just like anything else, you can abuse it. You can figure out a way, if something was meant for good, you can figure out a way also to use it for something bad. I mean, it's like they split the atom, determining the energy for what we call the nuclear power, E equals MC squared, and they turned around and made a bomb out of it. It was designed to make energy. So technology is the same way. We come up with something good, it can be used for something bad.
Kenneth Fields, retired from the NYPD, 28 years. I'm now the operations manager for Stone Security Service. Just to touch on what you were saying before, like black on black crime, statistically, black on black crime is not even nowhere near as high as white on white crime. It's just not talked about. So you have to get your mind, you've been trained to believe that black on black crime is the worst thing in the world and everything for some people, because I'm not saying you personally, but when you hear about it, how many people have ever heard of white on white crime? It happens, all right? It does happen. Statistically, 72% of the time, if something's going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you by somebody that you know. We generally run in the circles of people that we tend to be friends with. Most of the time, blacks with blacks, Hispanics with Hispanics, whites with whites, and then we have the some that's mixed in. All right, 85% of the time, you know, if you're murdered, it's by someone of your same race. You know, so don't think it's just black on black. There's all kinds, Spanish on Spanish, white on white, black on black. It's all out there. It's just certain crimes are just talked about and others are not.
My name is Darrell Jones, retired NYPD, Manhattan North Community Affairs Transit. I'm currently now the Director of Security for Gateway Center for Related Management in Brooklyn. I did 17 years with the police department, but I retired with a 20-year, 1 month and 4 days because of my service to my country, serving in Operation Desert Storm. Just answer it real quick, and then I'm going to let you have your question. When he talked about black on black crime and white on white crime, now I'm no criminal, but if I was going to be a criminal, chances are I'm going to probably rob, or I'm probably going to invoke some kind of crime on another African American. Why? Because I understand the way he thinks. I know what he's going to do. I know his whereabouts. I know how he walks. I know how he lives. So it's going to be easier for me to target that person. I'm not going to target the unknown. I don't know about the guy. I don't know what he has in his house. I know for the average family what's in their house. I know exactly what to go get. I know the material items they like. I know the layout. I walk in there, I don't see nothing, I'm getting out of there. I walk in there, I see a flat screen TV, I'm going through the whole house because I know. I don't care if it's in the projects or it's in the match. I know how you live. I understand the way that you think. Same thing with white on white crime. You understand the way the guy thinks better. You understand his ideology, what's in his mind, because you think like him. Nobody ever gives that a lot of credit, and it makes a huge difference. So obviously there's going to be more white on white crime, there's going to be black on black crime. It's definitely going to be ethnic generated in most cases. And as far as the technology, we can gather all the data we want. It's what you do with the data. If you're going to gather all the data, whether you use body cameras, use mapping, use tracking devices, whatever it is, if you're still bound by the same policies, the outcome is going to be the same. So it doesn't make sense to change any of the technology if you're not going to change the policies behind it. You know, crime is still a crime. Don't matter how I got the information, you still committed the crime. All I got to do is prove you did it. Whether I do it by crayon, or I do it by calculator, or I do it with a computer. I have to prove that you did it. Once I have enough proof that you did it, and the probable cause and the burden of proof is for me to provide, it doesn't matter how I get it. So as far as technology, yes, it's a great tool, but if we don't take the results and use them properly or change policy, it's useless.
Let's just say this, and this is something that I don't know, but seemingly it comes up so often. Like when we look at the Ferguson incident, we talk about we're credible people and we're supposed to be operating in such a manner. What stood out to the average black person is, in the Ferguson incident, here you had a population of almost 50% black, but you may have had 2 black officers. And you know, even across the country today, it seems that when people quit looking, the numbers go down for the number of Afro-Americans or black or those people that's involved in the process. And you wonder where that is. If we can't solve the simple things, how do we get to the more complex things? And look like we're not really addressing that. How did it get so out of hand in Ferguson where 97% of that people are white officers governing a community that was very mixed and so forth? And so those are the things that sometimes stick out to us. We know we have qualified people. We have people of character and integrity. It's not hard for you to find those officers, but when the people are not doing it on the front end, as you say, I don't know what the makeup is in Jackson, but I hope that it would be something that we would be comfortable with and proud of. And so that's just one thing that comes out. Because, yeah, it does a lot of things for people who are Christian-minded, people who do love the Lord. We know that man is imperfect, and he does have to be held to certain standards, or he will not perform in a way that you would hope that he would.
The other day, I was talking to the chair, and he asked me to prepare a list of questions for him, and we put that in the process there. But unfortunately, he was not able to be here with us today. But we posed that question because this is what something they recommended, that the workforce should mirror the population that is served. So the question was, what are we doing to try to make that here within the other, in the Jackson Police Department, and also within the Sheriff's Department? But my point is, there's a method already been laid out. They give them a guideline to follow. And it's coming from the Department of Justice, who we pay into that, and they pay into those systems. So if the point is that they do their job, then we could minimize some of these things that we deal with. And we would not have to spend a Saturday in our time talking about these type of things right here. We can be spending our Saturday also out there with our children out there playing soccer, basketball, or whatever, but by some of the people that's in position how they like to do.
And you know what? If we have a problem, and don't be offended if I say this, if we have a problem with quote-unquote white police officers, then let's encourage other African-American men to get involved.
Okay. God's messenger, let me flip to you. I'm sorry.
Get involved with what?
Being a police officer.
Oh, okay. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait, you done started something now. You done started something now.
Yeah.
How do we get them involved when they're not recruited, and when they are recruited and they go, they don't make it? How? It's easy for you to say that, but how are they going to get it? They're not recruited. Nobody comes out to the schools and says, in black schools, and say, I want you to be a policeman. And then second, you say, we have to solve black on black crime first before we deal with the fact that there's police brutality on our children. As this man said earlier, it's black on black crime, it's white on white crime, it's Asian crime.
That's what it commit
crime
where
is,
they live.
you commit crime
Where you live.
on where you live and who you associate with. Most of the women that are killed or people killed, it's not killed from strangers. It's killed from people that they know.
I
That
hear
live
that
right
all the
there
time
with
from
them.
my pastor.
But what you say is this. You just said, solve black on black crime first. That's just like saying, solve murder first. Solve homicide first. As a police officer, you deal with murder on all things. So what we have to remember is this. The reason that we see what's going on now is because of social media. If it wasn't for social media, America would still be under the illusion and delusion that black boys and girls aren't being killed at a higher rate. That the kids in the school, the black schools in Ohio, had the highest rate of all the 50 states of putting black children in jail for minor infractions that they put and do in school. Versus the white person can do the same kind of thing in that classroom and get tapped on the back, and I'll call your mama.
That's it.
The black child, or the Hispanic child, because now it's more on everybody.
Black and brown.
Okay, that's not white. All right, thanks to our president. Now we got all this going on. We had a 7-year-old boy just being handcuffed with ADHD on the news.
Right.
We would, if they hadn't videotaped that, we wouldn't know that the 7-year-old Hispanic boys are now with ADHD being handcuffed in school for acting out.
Right.
So there's a whole lot of stuff we got to do, but we can't move it out of the way and say that, well, before we can solve any problem on black crime, on black people being abused by the police, we must first solve black on black crime.
And before we go to God's messenger, I do want you to chime in, but I want to put this on you so you can chime in on the whole story.
Okay.
Every time we talk about police brutality, there's somebody black in the crowd that says, what about us?
What about it?
Playing right into somebody else's hand. We're dealing with that. Truth
are.
of the matter is, I find the church dealing with that. What I find the church reluctant is in dealing with those who have taken the charge to serve and protect. So real quick, as you prepare to answer that, know the history of policing in America. Police departments grew out of slave catchers.
Exactly.
I don't know how much you know about your history, but I'm a trained historian.
Come on now.
They grew out of slave catchers. And so they were always taught black folk were the enemy.
Always.
Even when black folk became police. I don't see police officers as being white.
By the way,
I see them as being blue. They're part of a bigger fraternity. And they have the best union in the world. Only in policing can you kill someone illegitimately and get a paid vacation. Now you go ahead and address that.
Let me say this first and foremost.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sophine Charles. I'm a retired police officer from NYPD. I am also an adjunct professor here at John Jay in the Police Leadership Program. And my current background, I'm doing a tremendous amount of work in child welfare and advocacy. and I continue to make contributions in law enforcement wherever possible. Any training that any police department in this country is delivering must have a race lens on it. And that the race lens meaning certainly taking a historical look at how police officers have interacted with communities of color. And one of the foundations of policing in this country is connected to what was formerly known as slave patrols. And slave patrols was one of the first organized forms of policing in the United States. And those patrols were designed to deal with people of color, the slaves at that point. And so if we're ever taking a look at policing and not understanding some of the historical foundations in which policing is done, we miss the mark. And we must look at how police deal with communities of color and have a race lens on that.
From a spiritual platform, I'm still trying to get an answer to the question. My wife and I travel this country on a continuous basis, and we travel with a bunch of mothers whose sons, daughters, and grandbabies have been killed by law enforcement. We hear the stories. A 7-year-old Ayanna Stanley Jones killed by City of Detroit police when they served a no-knock warrant to discover they were in the wrong house and said they were startled. And this little girl was shot dead and fell to die in her grandmother's arms. We have to hear those stories. And then every time we bring it up to people in authority, we hear, well, what about black on black crime? We're saying you got to stop trying to lump them both together. None of these brothers, I wish they were, in the neighborhood took an oath to serve and protect and to get the facts before they act. The other guys did. We have to hold them to another standard or we're wasting our time. I'm still raising the question. In some communities, they can go next door to the officer and get advice, cross the street to the prosecutor and get advice. All we've ever had was the church. Our kids are asking us across the country, when you can't go to the church. And I'm one of those folk who believe every pastor in the city ought to be right here today.
Yes, they should.
But they don't want to get educated because they're happy as long as they jumping up and down singing. I pastored Church of God in Christ for years in Columbus. Don't tell nobody I said that. When the church is not answering the community's call, who do these young folk turn to?
They turn to each other. They turn to each other, and then they have a perception of what has taken place, and their mindset is then, war. And I gotta say this, even like with the police, they continue to go out here, and we need the police. Like right now, if somebody was starting to shoot, I would expect these gentlemen to get up and protect us, protect themselves, and do the right thing. If I was in a fight with somebody who was trying to hurt me, I'm calling 911. I'm not calling the people out in the projects. I'm not calling nobody else out here. I'm calling the popo, and because I desire them, because according to what I was taught with my moms, to bring me up to respect the police officer. So you don't see me out here robbing people, killing each other. Just respect, and not just because of a nationality, of a skin tone, but because of a person is a person.
Yes, sir.
But the people, our youth are going to each other, and they're getting the love and they're getting protection from gang members.
Some of them are.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
And some should definitely, they all should run to the church. But even in the church, there are pastors who have violated people, so we can't blame all pastors.
We cannot.
It's like we can't blame all all police officers. That's why I use the word some.
Yeah.
So the bottom line of the matter is that we all need to renew our minds.
Which is why I'm so grateful to pastors like Jamal Bryan of Baltimore. I'm very proud of what some pastors across the nation are doing, but we just don't have enough of that's going on. Again, I gave you a quick history about policing. Policing grew out of slave catching. And until we change the mentality, I want to call the police when I'm in trouble too. But I have to be honest enough to admit to you, I'm a little scared when I do it. I'm a little afraid when I do it because Alton Sterling wasn't robbing anybody. Eric Garner wasn't out holding a gun to anybody's head, but he was choked to death. on the spur of the moment. You cannot keep wishing these cases away when it's clearly something that we have to deal with. Again, I feel like I have to defend the young folks that aren't here in numbers. There's another reason why the boycott of Walmart took place. There's a young man by the name of John Crawford III in this state. I don't know if that name means anything to you or not. Was shot and killed in the middle of a Walmart store outside Dayton, Ohio, a little place called Beaver Creek.
Right, yeah.
It was during the Thanksgiving, Christmas season, and Walmart never thought enough of that family to reach out to them and say, let us help you with a meal. They never even offered a statement of, we're so sorry this happened, which you can do and not take blame.
You sure can.
We're so sorry this happened. They knew he had 2 little sons. They never offered a gift card to say, here's some food, here's some clothes for your baby.
Right.
So Walmart has been not responsible in terms of the way they treat their associates by working them up to 35 hours to make sure they don't have to pay on benefits that they would at 40. They make sure that the women who work in those stores are less paid than the men who work in those stores. So there's a reason why there's boycotts against certain players. And I think this is what Sis may have had in mind, and I thank her for saying it, when she said, we got to get educated. And some of us don't know what the issues are. And if we don't know the issues, we can never solve what those issues are. And so we must understand our boycott. There are places I won't go, whether I announce it or not. There are things I won't do. It worked for Dr. King, and it works for us. But if we just sit around and get silent, that's why people took to the street. I just want to make that clear. If there had been an indictment of police officers and all these wrongful deaths, you wouldn't have seen folk take to the street like that. If there had been some justice with some convictions, but now they're scared to even charge them because they can't get a conviction. And so people take to the street. Who was it? I heard somebody quote Dr. King earlier. Rioting is the language of the unheard. To quote Dr. King means quote all of Dr. King. He said, yes, folk riot, because they're not being heard in boardrooms and in courtrooms.
All communities are not policed the same. And we talk about community policing a great deal. And the one thing that I would say about community policing is that we have communities that have community policing. And those communities are the communities that have a direct link to the commander in the precinct. You know, communities that can pick up the phone and call the precinct desk, can call the commander because they've got his cell number or the office number on speed dial to get directly to that commander and present whatever the concerns are. That's community policing. When you have that level of access to the police department, that's community policing. And some communities have had community policing all along. Communities of color have not had that level of access, and that is one form of community policing that really needs to take shape when we talk about community policing.
Yeah, I'd like to add that we've at Lane College, we've had some good relationships this year. I've only been here since August 1st. We've had good relationships with the Jackson Police Department and officers. One of the changes that became important for me to make was we have a security force on campus, but we are the downtown school in the downtown. And if you're downtown college in the downtown, you gotta have strong security. So it was important for me to have persons on our campus with arrest authority. And so as things were situated, we made the determination to enter an agreement with Jackson Police Department, and we have Jackson Police that serve our campus during our peak hours. And so far, they've done a commendable job. In fact, I'll share a little story. We had a group of young men who I think they got into a tiff over a video game. And so they were expressing themselves in an inappropriate manner to one another. And the officer, a white officer, went and he handcuffed the young men, and put them into his vehicle, de-escalated the situation around, and as everyone settled down, the situation was de-escalated. He then took the young men out of his vehicle and more or less turned them over to the dean of students, which I thought was the exact way that situation needed to be handled. I mean, it was a situation in which some young men just got worked up and it needed to be de-escalated. And certainly we have means within the college to deal with that. But actually, the interesting thing that happened though was so afterwards, we're kind of dealing with the situation. And so I had one of the young men who had been involved with one of the fellas who had gotten a little overexcited, and he asked me, well, why didn't they take those other guys down? And I thought, well, because he had managed it. I mean, those young men didn't need to be arrested. They needed to be settled down, and they needed to be turned over to us, and we could manage. So I say that all of it, say a couple things. One is that we've got to have good people in all fields of endeavor, and training is absolutely important, and good judgment is important as well. And not every situation requires the same level of force, the same response. And one of the other things that I said to Chief Weiser and Chief Willis and some others, that we brought the officers out to have law enforcement presence to serve and protect on our campus. But one of the things that has been interesting for me that I'm observing is that in addition to being a law enforcement presence on campus, is that they are serving as educators. And a part of their educational role is to re-educate some of our students, not all of our students, some of our students on how to have appropriate relationships with law enforcement officers. And I think that's been very helpful. They're out and about, they're walking campus, they're at ball games, they're eating in the cafeteria, and we want more of them. So
that's good.
That's good. That's good.
And that's part of the recommendation, again, coming from the Department of Justice about community-based policing.
Two Pittsburgh teens filing a lawsuit this week against their school district and police for the use of excessive force at a high school. In one incident, video released earlier this week shows a school resource officer putting a student, Ahmad Williams, in a headlock. Later, the video shows Williams being held down with the help of a man identified as the school principal, then being tasered by the officer.
Picture speaks 1,000 words, and that picture clearly does. This picture clearly does. Then a video has to speak 1,000,000.
That's Williams' lawyer Todd Hollis, who is also representing another teen, Quayshawn Wade, seen being restrained by two police officers in this April video. The lawyer says the student was later punched in the face. Hollis saying both videos show a pattern of abuse against black students. He's also representing a third student. School officials saying these are isolated incidents over several years that don't show systematic targeting. The Woodland Hills School District says it's cooperating with the Allegheny County prosecutors who are investigating the claims for possible criminal charges.
One was the targeting of black areas and drug areas. I remember most of our drug and gun and addiction task forces were always targeting the black areas, heavily minority areas. And one day I raised the issue to one of my supervisory special agents in charge, because they had cross-designated me to be a DEA agent as well. And I said, don't they use drugs out in, what would be a pristine neighborhood in this area? What would you call it? Precise? Upper East Side. They don't use drugs in Upper East Side, do they? No, okay, they don't, right? Okay, but anyway, so you understand my point. And that was very difficult for me, because when I talked about going to the Upper East Side and the more affluent areas, I got pushback from management saying, look, you go out there and start locking those folks up, They know judges, they know lawyers, and they know politicians. They will shut our operation down, and there goes your overtime. So that was that was a very, what we call, my detective friend of mine, Byron, we always call it significant emotional event, a C. I would say the other one was blowing the whistle on racism within the rank and file. As we said, Dr. Sophie just was talking about what she went through. I'm sure a lot of officers, everybody knows when you behind that blue wall of silence, and try being behind the federal blue wall of silence, okay? I mean, a lot of these guys are local NYPD. I was behind the federal blue wall. That means FBI, U.S. Marshals, Secret Service, everybody across the board. And y'all might be hearing about now, Secret Service has a class action going. Well, when you blowing that whistle behind that wall, you got all guns to bear. Because I had so many people who were prime time, good agents, and people coming to me saying, Fogg, don't say anything. You know what happens if you open your mouth, your career will take a dive. You know what I mean? I mean, when you got people on the inside, people, family, everybody, nobody wanted to see me because I was considered one of those most likely to succeed. They said, Fogg, you got the height, you got the looks, so you even got the voice, step away from the vehicle. Said, don't challenge that, man. So then you got all of that going on, and you got these people telling you that, and I decided to go forward anyway. That was a C, significant emotional event. Now, what I do to fix it? I worked out. To this day, I swim 80 laps a day. You know, I work out. I always kept working out, kept my mind, kept spiritually connected with God. Because I always said, Lord, you the one. Ain't enough guns. I can't wear enough guns. I used to tell my guys that. You can't put on enough guns. Sometime when something shows up, you got to have that innate, that inability to know and sense when to make a move and when not to make a move. So I think it was the spiritual part, the working out, and getting with other whistleblowers around the country, other law enforcement agents, people that talk about it, all of us coming together, forming organizations, joining blacks in government and other organizations in the country that are trying to make a difference. I think all that kept me grounded. I think I kind of understand what you're saying in the sense that when you're talking about a business model, like, for example, the war on drugs, let's just use that as a policy, bad policy, but we've got a mandate, go out and lock up all the drug dealers. Just go after them. So our goal is, how many drug dealers did you lock up today? And if you lock up a bunch of drug dealers, you're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, so, and there's no discretion in that. There's no, where we can kind of, what you're saying is, can we kind of, we see it ain't working, can we change it? Can we do something different, but we just stay to a regiment? Go get your numbers up. Get your numbers up. You locked up how many days? 30? Oh, you did a good job. This agent only locked up 2. You're not doing your job. So if that's the concept, I understand where you come from, because I've raised that before too. And how do we get discretion when we sit looking out on the street? Then on top of that, if our regiment says, like I said earlier, don't go over to this area, just stay over here. Everybody's doing it like that. Everybody's following. Now we're getting our numbers up. Every time we do dragnets, we do our big major press releases. Oh, we took so many guns off the street. We locked up so many drug dealers. Our prisons are growing. We're building more prisons. We're putting more people in prison. Got 2.3 million people in prison today. This thing is a well-oiled machine. We're rolling with it. But it's not working. The end result is we haven't stopped any drugs from people from using drugs. More people are using drugs and got access to it today than ever before. So I understand that's the question you're asking, and we're running it like a business, but it's at the same time, how come we haven't changed this policy because we realize it's not working? Right. And I agree.
And like you said, like most of you agree with the bureaucracy of it.
Thanks, man. Just to follow up on something you were saying, man. Okay, now I came on in 1978. I got to see Ray Kelly when he was head of the U.S. Customs. I always saw him do something I lost all respect for him. We were having a Congressional Black Caucus. Y'all remember here in 1990, it was costing me, New York Post came out with an article said, bigots with badges. Bigots with badges. Covered the whole front of New York Post. Matter of fact, that's the name of my next book. But the bottom line is this. Now, it covered the whole front page of the New York Post. And it was talking about the racism inside the U.S. Marshal's office. Then he flipped over, there was a big picture of me standing. I shouldn't be standing in front of y'all today because they left me on a stake out, get killed. I saw a lot of crazy stuff. But my point I want to make when you was talking about, the changes that you can see that they can make, but the bottom line, nothing happens. Because, see, First thing we got, as Sophie said, and we got to understand in law enforcement, racism is pervasive in law enforcement. I always said if everybody's doing bad, white and black, we're going to fix it. We're going to figure out a way how to correct things. But what happens is black agents, even yourself, you're going to deal with a different world than the white officers are. We already know that. But when I look at New York, and like I said, my major point here is this. We're talking about accountability. We're talking about how do we straighten this stuff out. And when do people come out and speak out against it, just like yourself? You're an officer on the inside. Like I spoke out when I was on the inside. I didn't wait till I retired. A lot of people wait till they retire. Then they start talking about this stuff. When I say you need to fix it while you're there, but we know what happens. Because as you said, if that Bradford went by and pointed to each one of them individuals and said, you fix it, he knows they can't do that. If he can't fix it, they sure can't fix it because he's the head man. So, and then what I said was this again. When we saw those, several hundred officers turn their back on the commander-in-chief in front of everybody on television. If that didn't tell me the New York Police Department was out of control, I don't know what else could tell you that. If you're going to turn their back on the commander-in-chief, you know what they're going to do to you as another officer if you turn around and report one of those officers was doing something wrong. So that's the way I look. I look at the whole culture as it's out of control and the public needs to take it back. And what this gentleman said down here about public unrest or people getting apathetic the public needs to get involved and help those officers who know that things aren't going right. You need some backup from the outside because you're sure not going to get it from the inside.
Yes.
Oh, and also, I think that the law enforcement, if there's misconduct going on with the police officer, the police officer should not be afraid or be intimidated to go and report the other officer because they're going to fear for their life. Maybe they're out in the field somewhere, maybe they're going to get shot or their partner may not have their back. So there should be, I don't know whether or not they're, what goes in the police department in this city and around other cities in the nation, but the police officer should not be afraid to report another officer if they're doing misconduct. They should be able to go without fear that something is going to happen to them, or the other police officers are going to, talk about them, or they're going to not treat them right, or something. They're going to experience retaliation for reporting an officer that's not doing their job. Because if they can report officers that are not doing the things that they're supposed to do, then that will make the police force better.
As soon as you start opening your mouth the ways that it can be corrected, somebody's going to look at you cross-eyed. So you need some backup. And now what my goal is to hope we can come up like the U.S. Marshals with a witness protection program. In the United States Marshals, the U.S. attorneys, we could not do our job without witnesses coming into our program so we can protect them. I say the first time a police officer blows the whistle or reports something about on the job that needs to change, he needs to go into a witness protection program. Serpico, I think that was here, New York City, right? Serpico. That is a prime time example. And that what happened in my career and any career, you spoke right about what needs to change. Nobody's going to do it. If the commissioner can't do it, and he's pointing others, you sure won't do it, and chief or nobody else, until he takes an active role and say, this is what we're going to do to make the change. You got to get the public involved. You can't do it.
I believe that one of the ways we get police departments in check is we withhold our future councilmen federal funding from police agencies that don't engage in de-escalation training. When you sit in a car and say, I have a gun permit, and you're told to give me your driver's license, and you're shot dead live on Facebook, and then y'all come tell the folks, show us respect.
What do you think it'll take to stop racial profiling?
Well, I mean, I wish any of us could answer that question, right? This is like a new low to me. It's so disheartening that he didn't have a weapon, he didn't have any drugs, he didn't have any behavior that was alarming, his arms were up. I don't understand. There was like practically 7 police officers there or something. Why this officer could have interpreted this as a threat is so beyond me. I mean, I don't know if maybe too often there is paid leave. I don't know if it needs to be, prosecuting when someone uses such poor judgment like this. I mean, that's the only thing I can do.
I think there are two things to think about, which is, first of all, as you said, he was complying. He was tasered. You can't tell from these videos, but what it seems like, and this is allegedly, is that he was actually shot when he was already on the ground, which is really alarming. We also remember a recent case, and I don't have the names, I think it was in Florida, of a guy who was a therapist working with a guy with autism.
Yes.
He's on the
Yes.
ground, on his back with his arms raised, and they shoot him anyway. And when he asked the cop, why'd you shoot me, the cop said, I don't know.
Right.
So what we have is, look, this is hard to talk about. This is hard stuff to talk about, but we have a legacy of racism in this country. And if we don't start calling it racism, then we can't fight it. We have to see what it is. Cops have to be trained differently. If this had been...
You don't have to train the police not to shoot white people. Why you got to train them not to shoot us?
But, Valerie, I'm saying everything has to be confronted. Everything has to be confronted. Because when you see a there was a high-speed chase recently in L.A. with a Caucasian woman. She went through several counties. She ran into cars. She ran up on the road. When they took her out of the car, they gently removed what looked like a cell phone and gently handcuffed her. If that had been a black man, he would have been face down on the pavement without 1 second of conversation. We have to change how we see each other, and we cannot do that until we say what it is, which is that racism and fear of black men specifically drives these shootings. We have to change as a nation.
Look,
fundamentally.
But I know we got to go to break. But first thing you got to do, you got to make it a hate crime. You got to make it. You got to put people in jail. When you shoot somebody under the color of authority, you need to lose your job, and you need to lose your livelihood, and you need to lose your freedom, like every other American loses their freedom.
Consequences.
That's right.
Consequences.
Need to be consequences. But remember, there are good police officers out there, and the ones that are not, they need to go to jail. They need to go to jail. And don't tell me this. We got to train. Y'all white. Y'all drive all the time until nothing happened to y'all, and we black. And I'm afraid to drive my damn car because if they don't know who I am, I could be shot. Until y'all feel that, this ain't never gonna stop. Until you all that are not black feel us and stand with us, this is not going to stop.
We'll be right back.
Tonight on Cochran and Company, driving while black.
Kicked me in the rib and kicked me in the face. He broke a tooth and knocked one of my teeth right clean out.
Violence on the highway.
How did you pull us over because we was black? At all signs that we was really going to be shot dead.
Has driving become a racial hazard?
We don't go out just looking for blacks and Hispanics. That is not the case.
One man's fight for race-free roads.
What about that? Obviously, racial profiling is illegal in this country. All police departments will say they don't engage in it, but yet there's some evidence to show that people are stopped very often because of the color of their skin, because of an intuition of the police officer who feels this person may more likely be engaged in nefarious conduct or have drugs. Isn't that right?
Well, with 700,000 law enforcement officers in this country, we'd be naive to say that whatever scenario we painted would not apply to some of them. I can only speak for the Maryland Troopers Association, the Maryland State Police, that absolutely forbids its officers to use race as a factor in profiling. Ironically enough, the Supreme Court in '89 in Socolow does not absolutely forbid the fact that that could be a factor, but most police departments believe that in fact that would be unconstitutional if that were actually tested, and in fact do not permit their officers. Whether in fact their officers always abide by those rules may be another question, but most law enforcement agencies do not permit race as a profiling factor.
Well, we certainly would hope so. You know, Byron, I wanted to share with you a personal scenario. You know, some years back, I was the assistant district attorney for Los Angeles County, and I remember driving down Sunset Boulevard with my kids in the car. My kids were very young at the time, and I was driving a nice car, and it had my license, had a vanity plate on that car. I was pulled over, and I got out of the car, and I heard the officer get out of the car and put your hands up. I saw all these officers out with guns pointed toward me, and of course I had enough experience in the justice system not to make any furtive moves, and I went over, and the officer, of course, my kids started crying when they saw these guns. I was over at the curb. The officer went into the car and went into my bag, unlocked the bag, or unsnapped it, and found my badge, and started to wave everybody off. And I said, well, wait a minute, why did you stop me? I want your sergeant out here. Well, we stopped and we thought the car might be stolen, but the car had my vanity plates, my initials on it. And it was clear that I'd been stopped because of race. And, you know, so I can tell you personally, these things happen. And one of the setup pieces, we talked about that. If you talk to most African Americans, somebody in this country and their family has had some contact with the police. Doesn't make you anti-police, but it's a reality that takes place, and it's a tough situation.
If you talk to any African American, you will find that they have had experiences of getting stopped by police officers and checked out, or their family members, or their close friends. It's impossible to talk to a black person in this country who has not either experienced this or knows somebody very well who has.
I'm a black man in America. I have had experiences that a lot of people who saw the video have not had.
This videotape shows what happened when Aaron Campbell, an off-duty 27-year veteran of the Miami-Dade police force, was pulled over on the Florida Turnpike. The officer claimed Campbell changed lanes without signaling, but Campbell claims he broke no laws.
You're a man. I gave a signal. I gave a left turn. When I went around that truck, I saw you guys sitting there. Why would I violate law and see you guys sitting there? Give me my license, bitch. You ain't giving me no ticket.
Stop resisting.
Now!
Campbell is blasted with pepper spray before the confrontation gets uglier.
I think the biggest problem is you got a system. The policemen, they got the power, but then you got a system that gives them the authority to do things. Like if the DA decide not to prosecute, that sends a signal to the policemen that they could do whatever they want to do, and they would not be accountable for it. And that's where the breakdown come in at. They need to deal with that. They don't need to just say, okay, we're going to protect you. They got to deal with that. Because as you brought that book up, there's many cases in there that the policemen, they get off because the DA decided not to prosecute. If you got a DA that presents something to the grand jury, and the grand jury, they're going to do their job, because if it don't look like it's lined up, the grand jury is going to say, we can't go no further. So you got to work with the prosecutor up to the top, the DAs. They got to understand their job and do a better job. You can't give them pass like that. That's the issue.
Good afternoon. My name is Jama Adams. I'm chair of Africana Studies at John Jay. The issue for many of us is that it's not so much training. Training isn't important, but if you look across the board, whether it is in health sciences, education, there's a lot of money invested in training. What doesn't seem to happen is it doesn't seem to infuse daily practice, and that has to do with accountability. And when I say accountability, I don't just mean punishing people, but also because of the status quo, things just continue the same way. Also rewarding people for best practices. So I guess the question that I would be interested in hearing people address is the question of, are the accountability systems correct? Because some of us, I'm not a police officer, hear stories that the police department can be very punitive. And therefore, if people are erring on the side of caution and doing what the sergeant or the officer says, so what does accountability look like in the police department, sort of generally? And I know none of you can speak for the police department, but.
My name's Danny Modell. Pleasure to be here. I did 20 years with the NYPD. A couple of my assignments, I was coordinator of the department's tactical training unit. I also worked in their firearms and tactics section, so a good part of my career was in training. And I continue that now. I teach self-defense at SUNY FIT. If training doesn't inform or infuse kind of daily practice, that tends to speak to issues with that training. And since the question, I think at least in part, whether you know this or not, was referring to the 20K training that developed out of the Garner incident. So let's look at it right from the beginning. It's referred to as 20K training, meaning 20,000 are going to be trained, right? So right from the outset, you're back to the compulsiveness about numbers. It doesn't characterize the content or the nature of the training. What's important to the department is that 20,000 are going to be trained. Right? So right from the outset, you're expressing it through a kind of distorted moral prism. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and Inspector Costello could, if he wants, talk in more detail about this. I could speak with some authority on this. This training was just within the last few days characterized by the police commissioner as groundbreaking. Do any of you know that the tactical techniques, the practical strategies that are taught in the tactical portion of the 20K training are exactly the same techniques that cops learn when they go through the academy God knows how many years before? The same exact practical techniques, and yet it's characterized as historical and groundbreaking. Those two propositions are mutually inconsistent. And let me, if I may, again, very gently, turn it around on the audience and say, an apathetic public is part of the problem with why, right, large established bureaucracies, government bureaucracies, continue on the paths that they do. They do because they can. They're not challenged enough, and they're not challenged aggressively enough. Otherwise, who would dare tell the public this is groundbreaking training when it's the same thing that's existed for literally decades?
You know what, and I know this good, but I'd like to add to that. The other thing that you said, okay, now you got to picture this. I'm on CNN discussing the chokehold. The guy the very thing that killed Eric Gardner, and this is something that was outlawed by the police department, if I'm right or wrong. I remember just saying the chokehold was out. Oh, the chokehold was outlawed by the police department. So everybody knows that. So we figure, well, we know he's wrong because he choked the guy to death. The guy said, I can't breathe. I'm there arguing with a New York detective, and he's saying, that was a great takedown. That was a good takedown. I'm like, man, the coroner said he died from strangulation. So, again, it gets to the hypocrisy of what you're saying. I mean, just to me, it just says it's hypocrisy because it's like now they're coming up with these. Let's just change the wording and get everybody to buy in. We quickly change the wording. We say, oh, well, we got this new type of training that is monumental. It was a chokehold that you outlawed, that you realized when you put a chokehold on somebody in a melee and somebody's wrestling, you might accidentally choke them to death trying to make them unconscious. So don't use it. But this is why we get into accountability, because management keeps figuring out, and I was in management, I worked way all the time, I mean, I did all of it. And you hear the same thing. All right, well, let's figure out how we can reword this to make people think we're doing something different. We actually said that. How can we reword it to make the, and then you're right, man, about what you said about the apathetic public. See, that's why when you start hearing the movement, Black Lives Matter, all these other people start marching the street, now the public's getting involved. Now the public's saying, no, we gonna get involved. Now we didn't come up with, I hope all y'all got one of these cards, because we got a card here called ULIRA, the Uniform Law Enforcement Improvement Act, pretty much. But what this is about, legislation about changing unbridled power that law enforcement has and giving it back to the public, because right now, it's not that we serve and protect you, you serve and protect us. That's what it's becoming now. And when you saw those officers turn their back on your mayor right here in New York City, when I saw that, I said, now they in uniform, they're gonna turn their back? That tells you right then and there that there is some really, really powerful stuff in law enforcement. They can turn their back on the commander-in-chief in uniform and keep their job. That tells you that.
Good afternoon. My name is Philip Banks. I'm a retired chief with the New York City Police Department. I spent 28.5 years with the department. I retired last year, so I'm retired approximately 10, 11 months now. And going forward, I'm looking to introduce a concept, relation-based policing, and seeing how we could make the necessary changes into the culture of policing and subsequently and hopefully criminal justice reform. Just real quick, the last 2 minutes of what you said, young man there, I could not agree with you more. And as my suggestion here, you know, I'd profess that I believe that I know the New York City Police Department better than anyone. I do believe that. Or I should say it differently. I don't think anyone knows the department better than me. And what you just said, those 2 minutes, the last thing you said, it could be more accurate in my descriptions, because accountability is the issue. When it came to the Eric Garner incident, one of the most unfortunate incidents that we had in the New York City Police Department, I don't believe that the training was the issue at all. We were trained that way. The question was the accountability and the enforcement of the training. So you can train till you're blue in the face, but if there's no backup to that, then you're destined to have another incident like that again. So I think you worded that correctly. You could be wrong, but I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100% on how you did. I think that young lady was...
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Baron Marquis. I'm a retired detective, worked 23 years with the NYPD. Currently, I'm a community activist working with my church, the Riverside Church, which is the Church of Social Justice, just to address the community issues and concerns relevant to community and policing.
Briefly,
And you know, there's a report now that's just been released by the New York Office of Inspector General on the use of physical force. It's online, and I think everybody would find it interesting to read. In short terms, the report says what has been said, that the policy was bad, it's vague, it's not clear as a patrol guide procedure, and leaves a lot to be desired. Absolutely, Dan. And it goes further to say that now we're going to use a tracking system, to the point that the young made about technology, to track how force is applied, when it is used, so forth and so on, as accountability measure. But it's worthy of review. It's online now.
I think one of the things we're talking about here is bridging the divide. I mean, the bridge is 2 endpoints, you know, whichever way you go, in or out. And you're going to cross some kind of troubled water, or you're going to cross something. So I think one of the things that you wanted to address was, you know, taking responsibility. I think that's one of the things that we failed to address. You know, we place a lot of blame, but we haven't taken accountability. And me being a union representative for 10 years, I got to see both sides of the coin, with executives and also with the police officers, and learning how to defend them. And although I didn't rise to some of the ranks of some of the men and women on this job, doesn't mean that I didn't understand the book. I learned to rip that patrol guide apart, in and out, because that's what we were governed by. But it's like the cops in the precinct, or the people in the neighborhood. Oh, that's a bad school. No, that's not a bad school. The people that go there are bad. The school's great. The buildings are fine. The structures are unanimous. Or the cop who complains about the bathroom in the precinct being dirty. No, the bathroom's not dirty. They clean it every day. The cop that's using it is dirty. So taking accountability means being accountable for yourself first. I can't make you accountable. I should be accountable for myself. And if you're accountable for yourself, I'm accountable for myself, then we can have some sort of peace, and we can come to some sort of resolution of fixing something. And we can train, but if you don't have competent people who want to receive the training and act it out properly, then you're going to have a problem, no matter how much training you give them. It has to be accountability. And if you have one person that's bad, or you have 20 people that's bad, they're going to look at you the same way. It's kind of like, you know, baking a cake. You know, you bake a cake, and the cake can be huge, and then you drop one piece of crumb. Everything that's in that crumb is in that cake, every ingredient. So you have to find a way to stand out and do something different, and you have to be willing to go against the status quo if you're going to make a difference. But what it comes down to is just your work ethic and being accountable for yourself. And you taking that training, whether you agree with it or not, you take that training and cater it and customize it for yourself and stay within those guidelines. That's the problem. You get the training, but they don't take it and customize it for themselves. My personality and Dan's personality is different. We can receive the same training. I may not get to the same, I may not do it the same way, but if we have the same results, then the training was successful. The problem is we don't want to take the training and customize it for our personality.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Castley, retired. I did 21 years, currently doing real estate and enjoying my retirement. Just like Danny, I worked in training. Some people are resistant to training. They already know that I know this already and there's nothing you can teach me. So you have to deal with that part of the personality. Then on top of that, when you do training, people have to continually use what they've learned. Once you learn it, a lot of times we don't have to utilize it ever again. Danny talked tactics. I was in the martial arts for years. Sometimes I would go downstairs and work out with the tactical guys. That was his unit. But the people don't want to practice after they leave. They get it for that day, and it's done. So you also have to practice the moves. You're not going to be good at something if you don't continue to use it. So my whole thing is, they get it for that day. That's good, but what are you going to do afterwards? Could I go to training for a day and have it be in tactical training and still be good? Yes, I can. In terms of the chokehold, I know a lot of martial artists who have used it. They've been on this job. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to choke him out. I'm not going to hurt him. I just wait till his arm drops and I got him and then I can cuff him. Okay, yeah, you could do that 100 times, but that, or I should say, you know, but 99, but that 100 might be the time when you're just like, oh, no, don't do it. Once they tell you you can't do it, just stop. Because no matter how well you're trained, you can't go on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Baron Marquis. I'm a retired detective, worked 23 years with the NYPD. Currently, I'm a community activist working with my church, the Riverside Church, which is the Church of Social Justice, just to address the community issues and concerns relevant to community and policing. And let me just speak to that too. There is a profit and there's a premium side to policing. If you look at Michelle Alexander's recent book, The New Jim Crow, she talks about predatory policing. The Department of Justice did a study with Ferguson, confirmed study that found that the court system policing, everything from trafficking to summonses, were done on the back of that community for profit and premiums. If you conducted that study in any major urban police department, you would find the same parallels. So the model should be changed to a human relations model, and that's a wide stretch, I think.
Actually, I probably won't need the mic. I just want to say this also about training. When you look at, you said about a bad apple one or a few bad apples shouldn't taint a whole lot. But that's really what happens, because the people that I know, they say, well, I don't know which apple is pulling me over, the good apple or the bad apple. So you see, once you're in that position, you can't, I tell people, you can't have a few bad apples in law enforcement. So it's not even about training, it's about accountability, because we get good training. I've seen some great training in law enforcement, when to shoot, when not to shoot, and all that. But I remember when I got on my job out of the training academy down in Georgia, when I got my duty station, I'll never forget what the commander told me. He said, Fogg, I know you all excited, you learn all that stuff about search and seizure and all that stuff. He said, but look, this is how we do it here. All we needed was the music in the background. And I'm just telling you that is, the reality is accountability. Because we get the training, but yeah, when you get on the job, you may have to do something. There's a lot of discretion. Law enforcement officers, we got a lot of discretion, when to shoot, when not to shoot. We've been seeing enough of this stuff on television where now the public is actually seeing how we operate. But again, if you got a bad apple, somebody says, well, y'all throwing us all under the bus because there's a few bad cops. Look, man, you cannot have a few bad cops because I got the means, the wills, and the ability to kill you. So you can't have that. So the training, it comes down to accountability. That's the way I see it.
Mayor de Blasio just allocated $400 million for training, retraining officers. And to your question, young lady, I asked an officer the question that you just raised. I asked him, I says, how is the training? I think the training currently consists, as he said, of 3 days of training. There's tactical training in how to dissolve through communication. And then there's this kind of communication talking process that they take you through. And he said it was hilarious. He said it was so hilarious that the instructor and a middle manager who's a sergeant had a verbal disagreement during the class that became a physical altercation. So sometimes I think the training dollars become a political issue too. They don't get the right training. There's nothing in the training that speaks to race relations. There's nothing that speaks to systemic racism in the system. I think all of that gets deferred and deflected, and the training becomes pretty much a system of cronies making money.
I haven't seen the specific curriculum or know the details of what's being offered. I've gotten some feedback from my students who are active duty members, and the feedback that I've gotten has not been favorable. Some have said that it's a waste of time. But the one thing that I can say is that any training that any police department in this country is delivering must have a race lens on it. And that the race lens, meaning certainly taking a historical look at how police officers have interacted with communities of color. And one of the foundations of policing in this country is connected to what was formerly known as slave patrols. And slave patrols was one of the first organized forms of policing in the United States. And those patrols were designed to deal with people of color, the slaves at that point. And so if we're ever taking a look at policing and not understanding some of the historical foundations in which policing is done, we miss the mark. And we must look at how police deal with communities of color and have a race lens on that.
I think the department in general, not just the department, a lot of times we put the blame and onus on the department, but I think civil service is our biggest burden, you know, because just trying to fire a guy, you know, me as a director of security, half the guys that I know that I've worked with on this job probably wouldn't last a week in the civilian world because there's so many, the checks and balances yourself. You don't come to work on time, you don't get written up, you get fired. You know, you don't get unlimited sick, you know, you get laid off. You get, you know, there's a lot of things that are different that civil service protects. And the job and the department has to hold accountability because there's so much that they can't do. There's so many other legal policies and labor laws. After being a delegate for so long, you know, a guy can go at home in his house by himself. And I'm not, by no means am I condoning drugs, but the guy can smoke a half a marijuana joint and he's fired within a week of that test. Or he's on the verge of, he will definitely get fired. But he can have 25 civilian complaints, 10 civilian complaints, he can curse everybody out the street, and we keep the guy. This guy's at home, he hasn't bothered anybody. He has never laid a hand on nobody. And not that I'm condoning marijuana at all, but the guy was home by himself. Maybe he was depressed, whatever, and I'm not saying that he should keep the job, but look at the difference. You know, so civil service keeps you. You know, you coming to work late, you know what? You can call your job, I'm running late, make the roll call. You can't do that in the civilian world. Now, after me transitioning into the civilian world, and I'm holding these guys accountable, my guys don't show up, no call, no show, no call, no show once. That guy's terminated. He's terminated. You know, insubordination, you don't get written up, you don't get a CD, you're terminated. So I think civil service and the civil service practices also play a bigger burden on it. The guy's a bad cop, you know what, transfer him to another precinct. He's gonna be a bad cop over there. He's not a bad cop, he's just a bad guy who happens to be a cop. Nothing you're gonna do is gonna change that guy. Nothing's gonna change him. If he's a criminal, he's not a cop, he's not a crooked cop. He's a criminal that happened to become a cop. So like he said, you know, there's more cops that report crime, and that's what we do. We don't like it either. We don't like the bad guys as much as you do, or probably more. And so I think what you're trying to say is there something else that we could do differently? There's absolutely a lot that we could do differently. But again, like the agency that he works in, the unit he works in, we have to start with policing ourselves. And unfortunately, they have a lot of guidelines that can even restrict some of the things that they can do as well. Because they still, at the end of the day, they're following policies.
Between the due process and crime control, what do you think is the best method for our society? Between the due process and crime control, what do you think is the best method for our society? All right. The due process or crime control, what do you think is the best method for our society?
When you say due process, what do you mean?
Due process, like the race from the society.
You're talking about due process of people and then also law enforcement trying to create crime control on the beat.
Yeah.
Okay, you're trying to bring a balance. Well, first thing I'm gonna tell you, one of the best things, this thing, did you get one of these cards? You're literate, this bill here, this legislation, this is gonna be the best for what you're talking about, due process and also crime control. Because crime control is about us as law enforcement stepping in there, trying to control, make sure everybody's following the law. I'm just trying to be as elementary as I can with it, that they're following the law. But at the same time, due process means how do we make sure when we're doing that, that people's rights are not being trampled upon. We're not trampling on their Fourth and their First Amendment rights and all that. That's a very tricky thing because that's what has happened here. What we're finding that in law enforcement and all of the public that's speaking out in Black Lives Matter and these marches we're seeing, people are beginning to feel like law enforcement, there is no due process in that process, if you will. So therefore, how do we balance it? It's you, the people. The people have to step up and the public has to step out and say, we don't like the way you're doing your law enforcement anymore, and we want to be a voice that we need to be heard. The problem with law enforcement is it's a monolithic sort of power structure that grows. What is it? Somebody said power corrupt gets, what's that terminology? Absolute corrupts. Right. And the bottom line is you got to have some checks and balances on us as law enforcement. I work for the U.S. Department of Justice, the premier law enforcement organization in the world. My case was against the U.S. Department of Justice. When they was throwing money on the table for me to settle, they kept saying, man, you need to take this money and you need to settle. That's like plea bargaining, pretty much. But when you settle, nothing gets done. And the only reason why I didn't settle, because I was getting ready, because trust me, they had beat me down to a point where I was ready to settle. I was ready to take anything they gave me, and then something made me go forward. But the reason why I didn't settle was because I believed that the systemic problem was so pervasive that I was the only person at that time that could go forward. And I went forward and got a judgment against the U.S. Department of Justice where you thought change would have came. It really didn't change a whole lot. It was like, even though they got a judgment against them now under my name, still the racism is existing, and matter of fact, there was backlash. So how does the public come out? How does the public get involved? How do you get involved? Because us as law enforcement, we can't do it by ourselves. We need you to be out there making a difference.
And, you know, we're talking about LAPD. I kept mentioning LAPD. I really want to say something about the LAPD this juncture here, because I'm going to bring up a dear friend of mine from the NAACP, and I know why I was in Los Angeles. He was also concerned about what was going on within the nation regarding police misconduct. And as Mr. Taylor pointed out, this document here, it was designed to be to address some of those social ills. I'd like to read something here from this document so you can see this vantage point. It said this scenario is now a familiar one. An officer attempting an arrest, failed to shoot an African American or Hispanic or other minority person. Words spread quickly through the deceased community that that person was disarmed. Crowds gathered and rock throwing began. There are injuries and arrests. Following day, minority leaders charged that the shooting was unjustified and demand the immediate arrest and indictment of the police officer involved. The police chief refused to arrest the officer involved. The prosecutor does not indict the officer involved. The police chief refused to arrest the officer involved. The prosecutor does not indict the officer on ground that there is insufficient evidence of any wrongdoing. In the next 7 days are marked by demonstration, step-up police patrol, and further arrests. Finally, the reaction subsided, and the police and the protesters settled into an uneasy queue. When was this written? Yesterday? Well, this was written back in 1999. That's a long time. And we have seen it go over and over and over again. And this is why we're here, to try to map a solution. There must be a solution. There's a novel that we repeat again, over and over and over again. We're saying LAPD because I was there in Los Angeles, California from 1983 until 2002. So during that time frame, I had a lot of dealing during that time frame. And police brutality was the issue during that time frame. And I got a call one day. My son was down in Tampa, Florida. He had been shot by a sheriff deputy. It was my adopted son. So I went to Florida. Did you see this binder? My son didn't die, but he was shot in the back a couple of times. A lot of things happened with him. When I was in the military, I worked a program called Social Action, dealing with equal opportunity and human relation. And I did that about 16 years. And I recall being assigned somewhere after someone had 5 on the base commander car and the wing commander car, and a black staff sergeant had taken over the command post of M16. My job was to go there and find the root causes of it. And you know, it was a humbling experience when I first began to work in that field, because we were having the same type of social upheaval that was going on within our civilian community on our military bases. So we developed programs to try to eradicate and deal with those type of concerns. And I'm one of the early pioneers in that field. But what happened is that when I was put in the field, we had to go to something like a 9-week class, and then if it was an instructor, you went to a 16-week class in race relation. But what happened is that working in that field and equal opportunity, I was working the field about 1 year before I went to school. And I thought I was very good in what I was doing. But when I went to school, I humbled myself, because I discovered that, yes, I was good at what I was doing, but there was some other people that was just as good as I was, maybe even better in some cases. So that was a very humbling experience for me. And then what happened is that once you begin to humble yourself, then you begin to have a respect for what other people are involved in, what they're doing in that particular process. And so, working that field, I was able to see so much and deal with so many different things. And I knew that you have to have an intestinal fortitude, being able to deal with people, senior installation commanders, unit commanders that did not want to hear what they needed to do, but they had general officers up there saying, "You're going to fix this, or else you're going to be removed from that position." You know, wouldn't it be nice if we had mayors, governors, would have that same type of man's idea? That if I put you as chief of police, if you are a sheriff and we elect you, you will ensure that certain thing goes on within the ranks. You ensure that your line officers do what they're supposed to do in that particular process. You ensure that they will do what is necessary to uphold the law when they protect and serve, which is to protect what? To protect the civil liberty of people as they serve them. Sometimes it's a very, very difficult job to do. But this is what they are bound to do, to protect and serve, and all at the same time to ensure that civil liberty is not violated. Very difficult. And then what happened is that the Supreme Court, they make rulings. And when they make those rulings, it's based on the laws that Congress and the executive branch pass. And when the court, when that comes before them, they make an interpretation of that, whether it's constitutional or not. That's a thing called, is it anything like illegal arrest, attorney? Can you have an illegal arrest? You can have an illegal arrest.
And illegal?
Yeah, illegal. The arrest is illegal. Well, what is that, illegal arrest? We're going to engage now. We're going to find out something here. What is an illegal arrest, officer?
An illegal arrest is when, like, if I arrest you for a certain crime, and basically you didn't meet the criteria for the crime. So I arrest you for a illegal arrest, or I didn't follow the rules of the Fourth Amendment or the Constitution.
So that becomes unconstitutional to make illegal arrests, right? So, do you know the rights of someone that being illegal arrest? Do you know any constitutional law as to some of the rulings? Okay. Okay, here's the police. Let me do this. Back in 1999, I was in Los Angeles, and that was during Y2K, right? Y2K. And the police, prior to Christmas, they had an incident at one of the universities out there, and they blew it. So they needed somewhere, in my estimation, to exercise. So we had our Christmas parade. And then what happened at the Christmas parade, people come out with their family and whatnot. And after the parade was over, I was in a restaurant there in South Central LA. And then I hear a disturbance outside. And as I walk out there, I see people had gathered. And the police were present. And for some reason, I started walking with this police officer. And as we approach, I see officers, about 4 of them. They was on this man, and one had his foot on this man's neck. The man was just grasping for air because he couldn't breathe in that pocket. His eyes were bucking out of his head. And I said with authority, "Don't kill that man." He let up off of him in that process there. And the man did like that. And then I hear, "We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We're not." Then I said, "Oh." And I'm still walking with the police officer. So I walk around there, and I see families on this side of the line, and I see police officer, LAPD, in full riot gear on the other side of the line. So what I do, since I've been dealing with problems for so long, so what I do, I walk in the middle, between them, and I come in front of the police officer, probably standing by the door. I said, "Sir, why would you have them to leave? Why would you want them to leave?" And one of the officers said something to him. And then what the officer did, he came forth and boom, hit me in the chest. Oh, my God, sir, why did you do that? Then he came forth again, boom, hit me in the chest. And he said, "Cuff him." I was very strong during that time frame, okay? I was doing all that weight like that, with a lot of power. And so, two hip got on this side and two on this side. A male on this side and a female on this side, male, female on this side. And they got ready to take my hand back. I did like this. I smelled them. And I thought.
Beat down.
No, they didn't beat me down, but I said, okay. I thought about all these little kids there and family that was there. So I reached my hand just like this. And I allowed them to cuff me. And I went on to jail. And I called my friend, General Sylvester King. He was a Tuskegee Airman and also a personal friend of mine. He said, "Don't by the time I get there, they don't let you out." I said, "Yeah." And then what happened when it was all over, some of the police officers would come in, and I can remember when they saw me, said, "What are you doing here? I'm out of here. I'm out of here." They didn't want to be involved with that. But they know, number one, I was assaulted in that process 2 times. Now, I probably would have been beaten down. But before Rodney King beaten, we had an incident happen on our base, very similar to the Rodney King beating here in Los Angeles. We had police officers moonlighting for LAPD, Rundle, Hospital, and all those police departments providing our security. But instead of, he resisted, he fought back. He made his way to the command post where he worked, a young black airman. And what we found is that it was really uncalled for what they was doing in that particular process. They were using the same type of technique that they were using out there in the street. There is a thing called police brutality, and it's real. Reading, it really blew my mind the other day. I was reading some of the law regarding rulings by the Supreme Court Justice. And you know what they said? They said, referring to illegal arrest, they consider is the same thing as assault on a person. If a police come and make an illegal arrest, it's some heavy stuff. I said, man, this is some heavy stuff. And it said that that person can use, you said they don't have guns in the car? Well, it said that person can use force. They don't have to flee. They can resist. If the police is using some type of force that can cause them great bodily harm, they can use the same type of force back to the point of death. Did you never hear anything like that before? Wow. What I'm saying is this. When you apprehend someone, and this is what this is really saying here too, we have to make sure that the arrest is proper in the beginning. Is that correct? If not, that some consequences can come from that. Now what I'm saying is this. You got laws on the books that say certain things, but it also says, when you read down there and some people, other commentary about this, say, well, here a prosecutor, they don't even respect the ruling of the Supreme Court. They won't indict this, that, and the other, and they just kind of don't deal with that. So that's a real problem. That's a real problem. Because the police officer really realized that when they imprison a person and create false charges and all those type of things, they violate that person's constitutional right, and they are subject to go to jail in that process. The people will enforce the law. Is that right? Is that right, Attorney? That is correct. So that should be part of a training process to make sure that the officer know when they approach a situation that they make sure that they are legally bound when they carry out or execute their job. You have a comment about that? Does that make any sense to you, Lieutenant?
Yes, it makes sense. And the Jackson Police Department, we make sure we train our officers, and if they violate, they will be punished. Period. There's no leeway for that. If you violate somebody's right, you will be punished. Exactly. And when you draw in, you train, and we continue to train every year, and to make sure you're aware of it. They know their legal consequences and their criminal consequences.
So what happened in Los Angeles? Well, they didn't know that I had been working police cases. My son was shot. And I had an organization called a Power Pack Center for Social and Economic Justice. I was working police cases. You know, this book here, let's show you cases all around the nation. It says stolen life. People have been killed by police officers. If I go to page 111 here, it seemed like something just happened yesterday. When I sit here and read this story, it's just a short paragraph. Can I have someone from the audience to come up and volunteer to read this story for us? Very short. Come on, somebody. Not everybody at one time. Very short story. Okay, Mr. Palmer. Let's hear from Mr. Palmer. Would you read this paragraph for us? You can stand here.
It reads as follows. February 17, 1988, Tony, a retarded boy, was shot and killed by police while playing with a water gun near his home. Friends and teachers of the 13-year-old Tony Groshi said that the boy was so severely retarded that he had trouble with such basic tasks as cooking a can of soup. The 7th grader spent his days with 5 other autistic children in a cheerful classroom decorated with posters of nature scenes and cartoon heroes. He would come up and put his head on your shoulder and just hug you. Everyone just loved him, his teacher said. He was learning basic skills like setting the table, putting stamps on envelopes, vacuuming, and feeding the fish. His goals for the year were to be able to stack chairs, count money, shop for groceries, and cross the street by himself. His extensive friends, family and friends in Caro Hills Project watched out for him. The police had stepped up drug raids in Caro Hill and did not seem to care about the neighborhood and its residents, such as Tony. The Chinese New Year celebration had brought the usual sound of firecrackers to the area, and there were volleys of explosions on the hillside below the projects all day. One of the many people who knew and loved Tony, said that he had been playing with a plastic gun, possibly a water gun, in his favorite hump, a grassy knoll near a huge water tower when the police arrived. He was coming up the hill and heard someone say, "Drop it." As soon as he turned, they fired. They didn't try to find out nothing about him. This is the San Francisco Chronicle, February 18, 1988.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
Yes, sir.
It seemed like it just happened just a few months ago. Those are some of the types of things that have been going on across the nation. Okay, I'd like to introduce another panel member, Harold Carter. He's the local president of the Jackson NAACP.
Police departments are not perfect, nor is any community leader, nor is any community. What we have to understand is that police officers, police agencies, perform the functions Lieutenant Anderson indicated. Their duty is to arrest those who have violated the law. They enforce the laws of the nation of which civilians create. It is so ironic that in a lot of ways when we talk about issues such as police brutality, etc., we tend to overlook the obvious. And I think Gary Taylor, good friend of mine for a number of years, has basically pointed out is that we like that common unification effort. But when we look at the issues of the police agencies, it's less about them than it is about us. We make the laws that they enforce. One of the things that's evident in what we're dealing with now with Ferguson and Staten Island is we're beginning to see that police agencies across this nation are overburdened because of the lack of attention that we as a community and our community leaders pay to this issue. Poverty is an issue that breeds the type of criminal behavior and type of behavior that we said we don't want. But yet, we seem to be very blind to the fact that if we can get involved with these issues early enough, then we can solve a lot of them before they begin. You know, member of Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church for over 50 years, I've come to understand from various pastors that, you know, we are created in God's own image. He gave us the opportunity to love animals to think. He put us in charge. But that means more detail that we have to think. And to think about these issues that we put our young people in, you know, the lack of education, the lack of good skill development levels, the lack of safe communities, the lack of job attainment, all of those issues breeds into the quality of neighborhood that we all have and should be able to enjoy. Absent of those issues and attention to detail leads us to where we are now. Police departments only enforce the law that's being given to enforce through our legislative process. If you create a law that says it's illegal to sell loose cigarettes, it shouldn't be a death sentence for someone that's trying to make a living selling loose cigarettes. I think we have to ask ourselves the question when we make those types of laws or make those types of insinuations, is it worth dying over? Because when you put the police in charge of doing the things that we fail to do as a community, you've given them the power to take a life. Now, yes, we should be able to pick better officers. We should be able to design better training. We should be able to enforce it through the policies that we have. But we also need to look at the system in which they operate. Right now, the mass incarceration of nonviolent criminals in our criminal justice system is appalling. We have more people in jail in a free country than any other country in the world. These issues are designed by those who design our criminal justice system. You know, the old phrase used to be years ago when lock them up, throw away the key. Let's be tough on crime. We should ask ourselves the question, let's be smart on crime. Because if we keep doing the same thing and keep getting the same answer, that's not rocket science. It's something that we need to do, and all of us are responsible for what's happening in places like Ferguson, what's happening in places like Jackson, what's happening in places all across this country because of the way that we treat people. We have no control over people. These are God's people. If we can't love our brothers and our sisters, then are we really truly being about the business of doing the work which we say that we all agree with? Hear what you say and see what you do. The NAACP is working with the city of Jackson, and we're working with the Madison County law enforcement officials to look at body cameras. The city has already agreed, and we certainly appreciate that. We're going to work with the county to do the same thing. A lot of the issues that we recently faced with better training, body cameras, and more community involvement and better decisions that we make will go a long way in order to solve the problems that which we now set here trying to resolve. The last thing I would say, going back to legislative policy and law, we just extended the Castle document as of July 1 of last year. July issues I want to ask you. The castle doctrine is where you can have a gun in your home if you want to. And you don't have to be licensed. I don't think you can't be a felon. You don't have to be old enough. But you can defend your property. And the wisdom about the state legislature, they have extended that to the car. So you can bring in responsibility, you don't have to be licensed for it, just go to your gun, you're not committing felony, you're of age, you can have it. Police officers everywhere have to be jumping out of this community and talking about what the, because now they have to assume, as I tell them out, yeah, you better assume, that there's a gun in every car. So when stuff starts to happen, things don't look like somebody go in and get their driver's license and somebody starts shooting them. We have to be able to use common sense, common logic. And I like what Taylor said about cultural differences. It should be, it's an asset. You know, just think if everybody thought the same way, if everybody wore the same checkered shirt, if everybody did everything the same way, we have a marvelous creation of a human being on the face of this earth. God knows it. I mean, if you travel, you can see the marvelous things God has created. But we tend to be blind to that when it comes home. We can see suffering and a lot of misuse of power, and we fail to do anything about it. Why? Lack of knowledge or lack of concern? Let's pray God that we can solve these problems in a timely fashion. Thank
you. Law is something very important. Having good lawyers is very important. Having an effective Supreme Court justice is very important to be able to interpret the laws of the land. Today we have a lawyer with us on the panel, and we'd like to call up Attorney Brooks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I got to keep my coat on. I'm just a little chilly, so
I was going to argue. You better
take it off. Thank you for inviting me here this morning. It is a pleasure to be here to talk about this most important issue. I have practiced criminal law in Shelby County for the past 16 years. I've worked as a public defender. So I'm very opinionated when it comes to police relations in the community and how we all interact with one another. Working with the sheriff's department, the police department, seeing how things work in the community, I've had a lot of experience with that. I've also been a part-time prosecutor. I've been a defense attorney for 16 years. 9 of those years, I was a part-time prosecutor in the state of Mississippi. I did them at the same time because the part-time position is only once a month. So I also had a different set of officers that I worked with in a very small town called Coldwater in Mississippi. And dealing with that police force, I think only had maybe 6 officers. But just being able to see how those officers also act, interacted with the community. In my opinion, what we must work on as far as getting things to move towards better community relations is we've all got to look within ourselves. I have a motto that was taught to me right out of law school. It says if we all believe, because we all believe in our Lord and Savior, that our purpose here is greater than our being. If we believe that our purpose, the reason we were put here, is better than our being, and we work to make our own individual communities better, if the police officers would work and truly get to understand the communities in which they are policing. I heard someone say no one is perfect. You have hot heads on the police force, and you definitely have hot heads in the community. But the problem becomes when you have an explosive powder keg is when you don't have the understanding. If we get everybody to try to work towards getting an understanding, the police get an understanding of the communities they're policing in, then we'll work towards getting those relations that we're working towards, the better community relations that we're looking for. What happens in the community in being a public defender is the community doesn't believe that things are fair. And sometimes we know that they're not. We've also got to work towards getting our criminal justice center to be more fair in their dealings with the community. All of these things working together in conjunction will hopefully help towards moving towards a better community interaction.
Amen.
Then we have Mr. Gary. Yeah. I had the pleasure to meet him a few weeks ago, and I tell you, this is a man of God that God has really blessed with the gift of knowledge and the gift of wisdom. He has a breakfast every Thursday morning at 7 o'clock at Inglewood Baptist Church. 2 weeks ago, that was the first time in my attendance of that breakfast, but as I have communicated, never in my life I have seen people from different denominations, different backgrounds, from me, come together and eat the Word of God from the same plate. In a way, I have observed that type of enthusiasm. And I just want to share that with you because I know many of us here in this room here today love the God, the Creator of the heaven and the earth in their minds. And this is what this is all about today. But as I said earlier, the Declaration of Independence, it says here, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among them, these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I'd like to call up Mr. Gary Taylor. And on that note, and what I just said, I know he will give us some insight for the next 5 minutes as to how can we make this happen. A nation that under God will give people respect for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to be with you this morning. I want to say thank you to the Richmond brothers and the Richmond family for having this event today. I was invited last week. Had the opportunity to meet with them, and I just applaud their efforts here in our community to help people. Amen. My life started in helping people in 1989, and my pastor that's sitting back in the back, Dr. Philip Jett, invited me to go to Brazil. And that was 25 years ago. And the Lord has let me make, I think, 96 trips to Brazil. And we've built many churches over there and helping people come to know the Lord. And through that effort, about 10 years ago, the Lord hit me and said, you need to do something in your own hometown. And so we got involved with the Maximum Man Conference. And that was in 2000, actually it was almost 15 years ago. And shortly after that, every other year, or for that point, every year we would have a Maximum Man Conference. And after about the third one, they invited some of the guys to come up to me and said, hey, we want to keep this thing going. Will you go Bible study? And I said, no, I really can't do that. I'm not equipped to do it. I can't lead a Bible study. And they kept on, and Finally, the third time, I said, yeah, I'll do it. And so, about 8 years ago, we started a little small Bible study, and there was probably 15 or 20 guys that got started, and over the years, the Lord's really grown it. And it's all walks of life. We have homeless guys that we bring in from Oakland Airways. We got some alcoholic and drug rehab guys that come in. And what I realized, guys, is God don't build junk. He don't make junk.
Amen. Amen.
I shared a story with my Sunday school class the other day that we're all one event away from being on the street. You see, when you see the world through that prism, it really alters how you see people. And you see, God sees us in our fullest potential and who we are as individuals. And so I just applaud what these guys are doing. And, you know, I'm not what I call a radical guy. I'm not going to be radical to the sense of trying to draw attention to something that doesn't need to be drawn attention to. But I think there are some issues that we have in our city, and there are mostly issues that I think there's a lack of understanding about. There are cultural differences. And these cultural differences bring with it some really challenging issues for white folks and for black folks alike. And I appreciate, and I wanted to come and be here today because I think we have to begin to start a discussion, and an open discussion. Because, and it really needs to be, in my view, it needs to be around, you know, it's going to be hard to unify if we don't have something to rally and to unify about. And I find it difficult, or I see it difficult for us unifying over opposing ideas. So I would like to propose to us this morning, and as we kind of have the continue with these talks, is begin to unify around things that are in common. And by that I mean, if I don't know you, I really shouldn't judge you.
All right.
And so my word to us this morning is that before we start pointing fingers, it might be time for us to start knowing one another. And what I'm saying here is break bread. If you're a white guy, break bread with a white guy. Get to know white folks. If you're a white guy, get to know black folks. You know, I tell my guys and white guys in the Bible study, everybody needs a black friend. And I tell my Bible study, when I die and go to heaven, man, if there's going to be sections, I want to be in the black section because the music's a whole lot better. And the reality is that we laugh about these things, but there are so many cultural differences. And there's a document that Pastor Robinson had provided me, and I've read every word in the document. And I'll be honest with you, it's really a good document. I would encourage all the leadership here today to get a copy of this. When I first got it, I didn't know. I kind of be honest with you, I thought, boy, this dude's a radical, you know? Because I saw that big stamp on the front of this thing, and I thought, boy, we're going to be marching in the streets. We're going to be. And when I read the document, I came to the realization here that ain't what the document says. What the document really talks about is us beginning to understand the culture of one another. That's really what it talks about. And so I want to submit to you this morning that God is real, God is alive, and God is awesome. And we serve a God. We're going through the book of Ephesians, and you know, Paul was probably the most dedicated, devoted Jew that ever lived. God called him to a ministry of Gentiles. And what I want to share with you this morning is we don't call our own ministry, God calls our ministry.
That's right.
And so as we begin to put this umbrella over this, and we begin this conversation, I would submit to you this. that if God's not the centerpiece of what we do in Jackson, Tennessee, it will not work. But if we put God in Christ, you see, the thing I realize is that everybody's prejudiced. Can I get amen on that? Amen. And the reason why I say that is because all of us bring with us prejudice. But isn't it cool that when I have Christ in me, now I can lean on Him because I know He don't have prejudice. So what we got to have, guys, is we got to learn how to work this whole thing in Christ. Because if man comes in this deal and man gains benefit one way or the other, there's going to be one opposing side that ain't going to like it. And so one thing that we do have in common, we got a lot of things. I have a lot of things in common. But one of the greatest things we have in common is Christ. And I share this with my Bible study that if this city is going to make a true turnaround, it won't be because of greater police force. It won't be because of greater leadership. It won't be because of mandates by the government. It won't be because of marches. It won't be because of any of it. It's going to be because of Christ. And so I just share that with you because that is the single greatest common denominator that all folks have. Amen. And I just want to thank you guys for letting me come and visit with you today. And I just look forward to our time together this morning.
Where there is no struggle, there can be no change. Free the people. Free the people. This is the most significant grassroots movement of people of color and others in America today. The Stolen Lives Project has worked untiringly to document the deaths of our loved ones from East and West. And to date, we have accumulated well over 1,000 names of individuals, many that we know and love, who have been killed either at the border or in the police custody or on the streets of America. So I want to encourage you to continue to support the Stolen Lives Project. Encourage your loved ones around the country to send their information to the various city offices throughout America so that we can continue to document and bring further attention to the atrocities of the various police departments in America. Today, the stolen lives are living because of your efforts. Free the land! Free the land! Our next speakers will be Lucia and Donna Dimerly. Donna lost her son to police murder. She's here speaking as a mother and also speaking on behalf of other mothers and fathers and sons and daughters, brothers and sisters who have lost their loved ones to police violence. Give your hand and your love to this mother who lost her young son to police violence. Donna Dimerly.
Thank you. First, I'd like to send out a special thanks to the universe for this revolutionary consciousness movement to stop police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation. As a mother, there's a virtual reality I have to face every morning, and that's that I'll never see my son, Mark Fitzsimmons, again. I never thought I'd be here speaking about the murder of my son, Mark, by the LAPD Southwest Division. My son was reared to be a lover of God, family, friend, and neighbor. He was taught to respect law and authority. He was gifted and graduated from Fairfax High School with honors and was accepted to UCLA at the age of 15 years old. He had a great work ethic. However, in his early 20s, he was challenged with bipolar syndrome, a chemical imbalance in the brain which causes mood swings. Little today is known about this illness. This left him vulnerable. And on the morning of July 2nd, 1998, Mark left home around 9 a.m. to go to the Bank of America for me. Little did I know I would never see my son again. On the morning of July 7th, 5 days after he was missing, I received a phone call from my parents who live in Cleveland, Ohio. The Cleveland Police Department showed up at their home and told them to call the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. My son was dead. My son died within a 2-mile radius of my house in Jefferson Park, where I sit on the board of directors, and yet the coroner's office never notified me or allowed me to identify my son. They tried to convince me it was a rightful killing. They said my son had a meat cleaver and had attacked some unnamed lady. I implore anyone who my son hurt to please come forward. They told me he confronted 2 police officers, Thomas Malcolm and Daniel Russell, Southwest Division. They were afraid of a 5'2" and a man who weighed 125 pounds, so they shot him in the chest to protect themselves. Captain Gary Brennan of Southwest Division told the community of Jefferson Park, where my son planted trees, that it indeed was a rightful shooting. Officer Rodriguez of Armory Homicide, Southwest Division, even told my godbrother, Nevitt Green, who works for American Most Wanted, that my son was confronting the officers and they had no other recourse but to shoot him in the chest. I never believed a word they said. How do you leave home, a law-abiding citizen, disappear for 5 days and then become criminalized? When I received the autopsy report, he was shot twice in the back. Not only was he shot twice in the back, but he was driven from Jefferson and 12th Avenue, handcuffed in the back of a police car to UCLA Medical Center. Yet they gave Robin Lloyd Starks, a reporter for the Sentinel, a timeline when the paramedics was called and arrived at the scene. They blatantly lied and deceived the community. What I'm trying to convey to you today is that we are in a state of emergency. If this happened to my son, I realize it's happening over and over again throughout the United States. It's impacting all our lives. Daily lives are being stolen. As my friend Joy Johnson says, it either paralyzes you or it galvanizes you. This incident enabled me to mobilize my efforts to campaign for public awareness of police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation. As my father told me, you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. People do not always feel comfortable exercising their power of choice, but as we know, our not choosing is also a choice, and we are every bit as responsible for the results of our passivity as we are for the results of our deliberate choices. Throughout history, the really fundamental changes in society have not come from dictates of governments and the results of battles, but through vast numbers of people changing their minds, sometimes only a little bit by little bit. By deliberately changing their internal image of reality, people can change the world. As more and more people come to understand this fundamental truth and then take appropriate action, new solutions are inevitable. Transformation can only occur throughout our communities if each of us stand up and be counted. And today, you are the visible demonstration, individually and collectively, that you are standing up and being counted. As my father said, you either stand for something or you die for, or you fall for anything. But today we're all saying enough is enough. No more business as usual, rights for all. Either human rights belong to everyone or they are guaranteed to no one. We are here today demanding rights for all. Thanks for your love, thanks for your support, and thanks October 22nd Coalition and the Stolen Lives Project for providing me this platform to alert and wake up America.
We must hear that voice. We must hear that cry. We cannot turn our ears and eyes away from things people have been suffering. Now it's a sad commentary when you see police officers out here and they're being assassinated by people. And then you never know the other plots out there to do some of those type of things like that. The point we're making here, the main foundation, is that we cannot continue in this vein. As we pointed out earlier, that there's a roadmap already been laid out there. As I said, I had a respect for people because I realized that we had a lot of learned people there. And when I read this document here, I know there was a lot of learned people that put this document together. It's come out and looked pamphlet like this. I would also recommend that you get a copy of that document, especially if you're dealing with community affairs in that process there. Well, what happened? What happened to me in Los Angeles? Well, first, what happened to my son?
Joining me now in Clearwater, Florida, is Howard Richmond, who was stopped by a Florida police officer for a minor traffic violation and then shot in the back when he tried to run away. Howard was arraigned today on battery charges and resisting arrest. Also with us is Howard's attorney, Joe Episcopo, calls this a classic case of driving while black. Joining us in Washington is Byron Warnken, law professor at the University of Baltimore. Professor Warnken is also counsel for the Maryland Troopers Association. Mr. Richmond and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. Mr. Richmond, tell us what happened to you. How did you get shot in the back, sir?
Well, myself and a passenger was trying to catch the curfew for a beer before 3 o'clock, and we just drove to the gas station and just this officer pulled up behind us, and he said, "I need you guys to get in the car."
Let me ask you, you said it was us. There were two people in the car?
Well, I had a passenger with me, yes, sir.
All right, what was the race of your passenger?
He was a white man, sir.
All right, and when the officer pulled up behind you, what happened at that point, sir?
He ordered us to get back in the car, and at that time, my passenger ran, okay? And then he put a gun in my face, and that really scared me, and he took me out the car and took me to the back of his patrol car and frisked me down real good and had his knee jammed in my back with my left arm behind my back. And at that time, you know, my back started hurting, so I just ran. I was scared, and, you know, I felt the bullets hit me, and then I heard them, and I asked him, "Why did you shoot me?" And he said, "Because you tried to take my gun, and be glad I didn't shoot you in the head."
Well, were you trying to take his gun, Mr. Richmond?
No, sir.
At the time he shot you, were you running away from him?
I was about 10 feet away from him, sir.
And where were you shot, sir?
I was shot in the right buttock and the right arm.
And what injuries did you sustain from these gunshots?
Well, unfortunately, I have a colostomy, and my left leg has a major nerve damage. My right arm has nerve damage. I'm in chronic pain, and, you know, I can't do anything now. My life is...
And tell us, Mr. Richmond and our viewers, why did you run, sir?
I ran because I was scared. I didn't feel he was going through procedures right. He never read me my rights. He didn't say why he stopped me or harassed me, rather, or anything, and I was just scared and ran.
Now, did he ever at any time tell you why he was stopping you?
No, sir.
What happened to your white passenger?
He ran, and he got away.
Did they run after him at all?
He didn't, sir.
All right, was there one officer in the car, or were there two?
It was one officer in the car.
All right, so the passenger ran away, and he stayed with you, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, and as far as you know, were you breaking any laws at that time, sir?
No, sir.
All right, now let's see. You have been charged with some criminal offenses. You've been charged with resisting arrest and also with battery on a police officer, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, and you've got your lawyer there with you tonight. Joe Episcopo, thank you for joining us this evening.
Good to be here, Johnny.
Good. Now, they filed charges against your client. Are they misdemeanor charges?
They filed 2 felonies and a misdemeanor. They actually had filed 3 felonies. Right. They charged him with trying to take the police officer's weapon, but when 7 eyewitnesses, 4 of whom were policemen, contradicted that, they dropped that charge. But the other 2 felonies are not supported by the testimony of the police officer either.
And what are they? What are those felonies?
Battery on a police officer, which is a 3rd-degree felony, a 5-year offense. Resisting arrest with violence, which is a 3rd-degree felony and a 5-year offense. And at the hospital, when Howard's clothes were removed, the police officer searched his shorts and found 2 joints.
All right, and so he's been charged with possession of marijuana
Misdemeanor
also, right?
marijuana, that's correct, which I believe is probably an illegal search.
Well, that'll be interesting. Now, Mr. Warnken, I wanted to ask you about this. It seems to me in this case that Mr. Richmond is a victim, isn't he, in this situation? I mean, should an officer who stops a person, let's say for a traffic violation, we're charitable in this case, should he then be privileged to use deadly and excessive force to a person who's running away from him and shoot them in the back?
Johnny, the only information that I have is the report that was prepared by Mr. Richmond's father as well as the newspaper reports.
Sure.
But based upon that, it seems to me that there are 4 levels of intrusion where there would have to be the analysis. The first level is, was the stop proper in the first instance?
Okay.
And the Supreme Court says yes, if there is any reasonable suspicion of any safety violation, traffic violation, whatever. The next level of analysis would be whether the frisk was permissible. And even if the stop's permissible, there would have to be a reasonable suspicion that Mr. Richmond was presently armed and dangerous. I guess that's a factual issue. And then the next level would be, was there an attempt to arrest? It seems from what I'm reading that there's some question as to whether there was or wasn't. If there was, then that would be permissible only if there was probable cause to believe that a crime was being committed. And then your last question dealing with deadly force would be that If the person has committed a crime, then the question is, can deadly force be used? And there the answer is yes, but only if the officer honestly and reasonably believes that that person poses imminent serious bodily harm or death to either himself or to someone else were he to escape.
Well,
so those are the four levels.
Those are the 4 levels. Now, Joe Piscopo, now let's look at the facts as you understand them.
Exactly. Under those criteria, they're not going to make any of those.
All right, now
none, zero.
Well, let's look at the facts in this case. If a man is running away from you under any scenario, you should not be privileged, it seems to me, if this person appears to be unarmed, he's running away, it's been a traffic stop, you could shoot him in the back from 7 or 8 feet. Is that
well, let's start with the stop. The stop, according to the police officer, was that the headlight or a tail light was out. Now, you know, a headlight or a tail light as he's driving by. The police checked the car after it was impounded, and all the lights functioned properly. Secondly,
before you move to the second level, on that first level, and again, I don't know the facts, but if the fact finder were to find the facts as the officer alleged, then whether or not subsequently the light was working or not working, if the officer honestly and reasonably believed that there was reasonable suspicion that this safety violation occurred, then the stop
Byron, let
would
me
be
interrupt you on that.
permissible.
Haven't you found that in some cases the police, you know, and this doesn't paint all police with this brush, some people make up reason to stop you. In other words, if the light doesn't work when they check it, and the police officer said it was defective before that, he could have been lying about that to articulate a reason to come within the ambit of what the Supreme Court says. Isn't that right, Brian?
There's no question that any officer would have that power, would not have that right, but would have that power.
Yes.
Although, let me qualify what you just said, Johnny, to point out that the Supreme Court actually did approve, assuming the officer's telling the truth, did approve that a subterfuge stop is permissible. Gee, I don't normally stop people because of a light, but I'd really like to stop this guy. Fortunately, there really is a light out, or I believe there's one. The Supreme Court would make that a permissible stop.
But Byron, I guess the point is the police officers have a lot of power.
No question.
The officer on the beat is the single most powerful figure in the justice system, and they can articulate reasons for stopping, sometimes that aren't true. But go on, Joe, you were going to continue on.
Well, let's go to the next level. When the white male passenger ran, no crime had been committed at that point, except perhaps maybe by the white male resisting arrest without violence. Howard was in the car saying yes, sir, and no, sir, providing his driver's license and identification. So in the next instance, the police officer puts the gun in Howard's face while they're searching for the white male that ran away and brings him to the back of the vehicle and begins to frisk him. At which point he finds nothing and starts to arrest him. He doesn't tell him anything. He starts to cuff him. At that point, Howard was afraid. He thought this guy was a maniac, and he took off, and he had a right to do that. He can resist arrest without violence. An unlawful arrest can be resisted without violence.
Byron, you want to respond to that?
Assuming that if the stop was illegal, then everything is illegal thereafter. Assuming that the stop was legal, then the question is, under Maryland versus Wilson, a case I argued unsuccessfully, that he can be made to get out of the vehicle. The officer probably should not draw his weapon. However, ironically enough, that would not be unconstitutional. What would be unconstitutional would be to pat him down and frisk him unless there was reasonable suspicion he was presently armed and dangerous. And again, I don't know the facts there as to what the officer believed. But, in fact, he could be taken to the back of the car. He could only be frisked if there was evidence that he was presently armed and dangerous.
Well, in this case with Mr. Richmond, of course, he could very well be dead, couldn't he? And that's a real problem when we allow this, don't you think, Brian?
Let me throw in another factor, and that is, you asked me before about the gun drawn. One of the reasons the Supreme Court would permit that is because of their finding that all traffic stops are inherently dangerous. And ironically, the Supreme Court did hold in Hadari D that quote-unquote innocent people do not run, and therefore there would be some reasonable suspicion because of the passenger running, which would play.
But Byron, you couldn't shoot. But Byron, you can't shoot him in the back.
Absolutely correct. The only way you can use deadly force of any kind would be if there was an honest and reasonable belief of imminent, serious bodily harm or death to either that officer or an innocent third party.
Well, Joe, let me ask Joe. And what happens is, when this happens, the problem is, and this is why people don't have as much confidence in the justice system as they should. What happened to this officer at this point, Joe?
Well,
shooting. What's his punishment, if anything?
First of all, the state attorney, the prosecutor who filed these charges, cleared the officer of any criminal wrongdoing, didn't even convene a grand jury to look into it. Next, the sheriff's office said it was unjustified and he was suspended 15 days without pay. That's it.
That's where it is at this point. Well, let me ask this, Joe. Do you anticipate at least contacting the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division and asking them to take a look at this? You know, the federal government will come in and take a look at these kind of practices and policies, especially they'll look at an individual case also.
Well, Howard's father, Elmore Richmond, who runs the Power Pack Center for Social Justice in Los Angeles, has already done that. You may know him, Johnny. He has a big organization there.
I don't think I know him. I don't think so.
Well, anyway, Elmore Richmond has already done that and has already contacted all those agencies, and they're fully aware of what's going on down here, and we're hoping they come in and look at it.
Well, Howard, you did have marijuana secreted on your person. Was that why you ran, or was that one of the things that entered into your running?
That's not why I ran, because I know the marijuana, that was a misdemeanor and it was petty, and I also know if I put my hands on a police officer, that's one of the worst charges you can get. I ran because he was hurting me and he scared me. That's why I ran.
All right, and what about your record? You had other dealings with the police in the past, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so you know how to conduct yourself, I presume, when you're stopped by a police officer.
Yes, sir. You have to be nice. If you get stupid or get an attitude, that make them treat you bad. But if you yes sir, no sir, you know, you have to practice on how to even just fake like you just trying to get out of there. You know, I'm just, you know, yes sir, no sir, and you know, I ran and I got shot for that.
And Johnny, the witnesses support that yes sirring, no sirring. There were 3 white people who don't even live in this city who were gassing up their vehicles. They drove off, and when they read the newspaper account the next day where Howard was accused of trying to take his gun, they came forward. They said that this was pure and simple. They shot this guy in the back for no reason. It happened right in front of them. They saw it. They've been caught, and they're going to pay for it. They think they're going to prosecute this guy and get away with it. I don't think so.
Well, one of the other things, Byron, that I think is also troubling is the package, as we call it, of charges that often are put on the victim, perhaps to stop them from suing civilly or to cover up what's some improper conduct. You know, resisting arrest, battery on a police officer are charges which really stem to the officer's credibility. And so very often throughout our career, when I was a young city attorney or the assistant DA of LA County, I saw these charges that weren't appropriate, where the victim had to go through a trial to get acquittal, and then end up, of course, suing at that point. And I think that's really, it may not be obstruction of justice, but I think it's improper when we see that happen. Don't you agree, if those are the facts?
Johnny, you've appropriately identified the interplay between the criminal justice system, civil litigation, and administrative disciplinary process. I designed a seminar called Issues in Law Enforcement, where we take one set of facts and examine it in the interplay of those 3. And you are right, we cannot ignore the fact that because administrative disciplinary charges come and because civil litigation comes, that sometimes cuts both ways in terms of deterring or causing police conduct or misconduct. Absolutely, that's a possibility.
Right. I filed a complaint with the Justice Department against the state attorney. The Sheriff's Department said the shooting was unjustified. It was unjustified shooting. The state attorney would not prosecute. So I filed a complaint to the Justice Department suing the state attorney and also the officer who shot my son. Before the complaint was processed, the officer who shot my son, he committed a felony. He went to prison. And unfortunately, Harry E. Cole in Tampa, Florida, in that area, I should say, he committed suicide because of whatever else was going on in his life. And the other part of that, my son, because of what was going on with his wife, his very best friend had a relationship with him. He tried to take him out. So he ended up going to prison too. So that was a sad commentary altogether in that process there. But the sad thing is that you got many, many situations like this going on that impacting many, many people, and you don't hear those voices. You don't hear those voices. Dealing with LAPD on this incident, what happened, they didn't know I had been processed, these officers that were involved, they didn't know that I had been processing complaints after complaints in the office. Dealing with the local LAPD, processing those complaints with different people within the record. So within 3 days, I sent an after report to the president about that serious incident that took place and put those people's lives there in jeopardy. So you have people like me that have been working, communities concerned. But you know, this is one resolve coming from me. I don't plan to do this. I don't plan to spend my time working this type of problem. People get paid too much money for this to continue to go on. The only thing they have to do is to comply with some laws and carry out their responsibility, just like those general officers did. When a commander failed to carry out their responsibility and suffer impact, mission accomplishment, they got rid of it and put someone there that could do the job. And here we are, we elect people, put them in position to do certain jobs in that particular process there. And when we elect people to do certain jobs, we expect those people, we should have some expectation. One of those expectations, if you're working with the police department, that the people that is charged of that carry out their responsibility, make sure that they know what's going on, and the people out there are acting within the law in that particular process there. Even if you got people up there, with a state attorney, or whoever should hear something, they fail to indict the information there. And the point when we talk about mapping a solution to the problem, and the point we're trying to lay out here, you have people that have been paid, that are highly qualified, to make recommendations to follow, down to every police department throughout the whole nation. But yet, we still have a continuation of the same type of thing over and over and over again. To fix it, then we need to be able to follow the recommendations of the people that made the record and getting paid to come up with that type of information. Never come.
Just a couple of things. I wrote down 3 things as everybody here's the first one now. One made is respect. What you respect in life is what you will attract. And if you don't respect someone, then you're not going to be able to attract that person. True. And I think what we're really, just to be honest with you, what we're kind of dealing with is cultural colonialism. And that's when sometimes white people think they're better than black people. And I think what has to happen is this is an educational process. And when I look in God's Word, I see it very clearly that the Jews thought the same way that white people think. And I go back to Christ, that it takes Christ. See, I see color as a man, but in Christ I don't see color because Christ is seeing for me. And so I have to have a better understanding of your culture, a better understanding of who you are. And in order for me to do that, I got to get to know you. And I'll tell you, some of my best, coolest friends I got are black guys. And I just love them. And I know for certain, if anything were to ever happen to me, those jokers will be the first ones right there. Because they're loyal, they're loving, they're kind. And I tell you, well, they have a deep love and respect for relationships. And oftentimes, white people, we have a difficult time with relationships. Our relationships are quick and in and out. I remember having a black guy invited to come to our church. And after he came, I said, what's the difference between our church and your church? And he said, well, at the end of the service, y'all leave. He said, we black folks, we stay around and talk for 30, 45 minutes. He said, y'all act like y'all in a movie. You know, just go straight to your call. Well, those are cultural differences, but we have to learn to respect one another. The second thing is educate.
Right now, it is my distinct honor to be able to introduce to you Mr. Celeste King, longtime freedom fighter in Los Angeles and throughout the world. A man who gave his life and continues to give his life to the cause of freedom wherever it is called into question. He is the state chairman of CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, past president of the Los Angeles Human Relations Commission, past president of the Los Angeles NAACP. So committed to freedom that he volunteered in World War I as a private. But that World War II, thank you, and his commitment caused him to rise to be a Tuskegee Airman. So strong has his commitment been to freedom throughout the years, maintaining himself in the reserves, that he's rose and retired as a brigadier general from the Air Force. Let's put our hands together and give thanks to this great warrior, Celeste King. Do you want to hold it?
Before Mr. King speak, I just must share this with you. I am a living witness of police, excessive force, brutality, you name it. A few months ago, I was at the Martin Luther King Hospital visiting my brother-in-law. He had had a car accident, and when I came out, I got in my car. I had a ticket. It was $161 for the ticket. I couldn't believe it. So I got in my car. I said, I'm going to protest this. I go around. If anybody know Martin Luther King Hospital, it's like a U, the driveway. And just as I was coming around to go to the street, about 10 or 12 sheriff cars come squeeching up to my car and all up on the side out of the bushes with shotguns aimed at me. And I didn't know what was happening at first. I thought they were looking for somebody. I'm trying to see who they looking for. And I happened to look back, and this cop had the shotgun directly at my head and told me to get out the car. They all of them screaming, get out the car. So I didn't know what was going on. I got out the car. Needless to say, I'm not going to take up much time. They arrested me, handcuffed me, put me in the car, took me to jail. Mistaken identity. Okay, kept me in jail overnight. About 4 o'clock the next evening, they came to the cell and said, we're going to let you go. We're not filing any charges. But by that time, Mr. Celeste King here had a bond there waiting for me. They sent the bond back. Never said, I'm sorry.
Celeste King. Let's give it up for our elder.
I've been around probably too long, but I'll tell you one thing. I'll make this very short. In all these years in Los Angeles, I have always been optimistic that the future will be better. But I think now that we are going to have to look in the mirror and decide for ourselves if things are going to be better. We have got to begin to turn the curve. It is getting more and more difficult out here, and we're going to have to take a lot of the responsible kind of actions. We're going to have to acknowledge that there are not going to be any particular groups or people who are going to pull us out of the predicament that we are in. You're going to have to do whatever is necessary in order to accomplish that. I would suggest that we all think about spending a few more years in school, upgrading ourselves. Now there should be almost an avalanche of people going into the community colleges and four-year colleges, regardless of your age. The only answer to this situation is what you do as an individual. And if you're going to fight a system, you're going to have to be in a position to assist in changing public policy. That means if you're going to be on the beginning of this new flow, that you've got to begin to look at the use of your time and do what it is that you can do in order to get involved at the board levels of various public agencies so that you can help. And in order to do that, education is one thing that you will need. I spent 9 years going to night school, and I can tell you those were the most enjoyable years of my life. And I think that had I not gone, I certainly would not have been able to understand the whole process. We need to understand what's going on. So let's think about it, regardless of your age. Think about where you can go to increase your learning capacity and to increase your ability to fight against the difficulties that are out here. So let's understand it. The only solution to this problem is personal education. And then let's get to doing something about it.
That's right.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you.
So I heard him mention our president. I want to say one thing to you. I'm a Republican. And, I'm a Republican candidate. And the thing I have to say, I know you say it's about us, but you mentioned Donald Trump. No, all about that because crime and this crime and all this stuff you see going on, that was going on way before President Donald Trump became president of the United States.
I talk about hate crimes. You talk
all
about
I have to say is Donald Trump, to be honest with you, it may have pissed some people off, but he is not the key reason why half this crap is going on in the United States. Now, this is what I'm saying. Instead of us blaming Donald Trump for most of our problems and sitting here saying, Donald Trump is a racist, Donald Trump's I'm going to be honest with you. I'm praying for the man. And you know what? That's what I'm called to do. I'm called to pray for leadership. Whether I don't agree on everything Donald Trump say, but guess what? That's the president of the United States, and that's my president, and I'm going to pray for him. He's the pilot, and if he goes down, the whole plane goes down. That's what I'm going to say on that.
Hello, my name is Nadine Richmond, co-founder of the Church Readiness Ministries. I'm also a part of the Faith and Social Justice Alliance, which was founded by Pastor Jerome McCurry and his wife Candace McCurry. As you have watched the video presentation, you can see in the video that this struggle for justice, this struggle for righteousness and equality, for fair treatment has been going on in this nation for a long time. The fight has been going on for a long time. And the question has been raised, where is the church? Where is the leadership in the church throughout the years that we have been fighting this problem of police brutality in this nation? And that's a question also that I have been asking as I've watched this in different videos, as I have seen the different things that have been going on with people getting killed by the police for no reason, little kids getting killed for no reason, people dying in jails and nobody knows what happened. And then you have people who are fighting for the cause, they are protesting, they are going forth, but then where is the church? Where is the leadership in the church? Where are the pastors? Why are not the pastors out on the front line with people who are hurting? You've got hurting mothers. You've got hurting fathers. You've got hurting brothers and sisters, people who have lost loved ones, and many of them for no reason. You have people who have been walking down the street running away from the police and they get shot 10, 15 times for no reason. It is uncalled for. And where is the body of Christ in this struggle in which we find ourselves in? And that is a question that has weighed heavily on my mind for such a long time. Until finally, one day, God gave me the answer. A particular scripture was brought to my mind in the book of Malachi, the 3rd chapter. I'm going to read a little bit of it for you, starting at the 2nd verse. It says, "But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness." He said he's going to purify them, so they may offer unto God an offering in righteousness. And what is righteousness? Righteousness is doing what's right according to the word of God. God wants to purify us as gold, and he wants to purify us as silver. But we've got to stand up for righteousness. We've got to stand up for the word of God. We've got to stand up for what's right. But in this struggle that's going on that we find ourselves in the African American community, where is the leadership in the church? As far as I can see, it's basically non-existent. I'm sure you have some pastors out there that are out there fighting for the struggle, for this cause, but as a collective group, it's basically non-existent. The Civil Rights Movement, when I look at that and I look at the Civil Rights Movement, if it wasn't for the church, if it wasn't for Dr. Martin Luther King, who was a pastor, standing up and fighting this cause with other ministers and other people in the church, where will we be right now as far as our civil rights are concerned? Will we even have obtained the right to vote if it had not been for the struggle that they went through? When you look at what happened when Lincoln, he signed the Declaration to free the slaves, who was it that came up against slavery? It was the church. It was Christians that knew that this what was going on in this nation that was wrong. They knew that this enslavement of other people, they knew that this was wrong. So they began to stand up. They began to speak out about it. And they began to fight against injustice. They began to fight against this horrific thing that was going on in this nation. And the same way today, police brutality is wrong. Killing people, whether they've done something wrong, whether they have not done anything wrong, it is still wrong. If they've committed a crime, then let them have their day in court. But to not get involved in this fight and in this struggle, this is everybody's struggle. This is the church's struggle. And we have got to stop keeping our mouths closed. We have got to start standing up for this problem that we face right here in this nation. And as I said, as you've watched the video, you can see that this problem has been going on for such a long time. And we've got to do something about it. And as I continue to read in Malachi, it says, "Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old and as in former years. And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, and against the adulterers, and against false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right, and fear not me, saith the Lord of hosts." So God said he's going to be a swift witness to all of these things. He's going to be a swift witness to the sorcerers, to the adulterers. He's going to be a swift witness to false swearers. And what are false swearers? False swearers are people who tell lies. And we have found that lying in our police departments these days is very prevalent. This is a huge, tremendous problem in our police departments today. So we as the church, it says God is looking for an offering in righteousness. So we are the body of Christ. And if we don't, we are his eyes, we are his hands, we are his feet. We speak his words. And if we don't stand up and if we don't go forth and take this fight and get involved in this fight, then how can we say that we are the body of Christ? How dare we say we're standing up for righteousness? How dare we say we're standing up for what's right in this nation when we can't even stand up for this fight that's going on in this nation? Jesus did it. He came against the Pharisees. Yes, they were the religious rulers of the day. He came against the Pharisees, the Sadducees. He came against a wickedness. And it doesn't matter if they were church leaders. That doesn't even matter. He came against the wickedness that was taking place. And police brutality is wicked. Killing people for no reason is wicked. That is wicked. And if we have got to stand up and we've got to fight, we've got to get out there and stand with those people who are out there fighting each and every day for a change in this nation. And during the video, I'm sure you heard where one of the police officers said that they can't do anything. They've tried to make change from the inside, but they can't do anything unless we get involved, unless we as the people who get involved. We've got to stop standing around talking about what's going on, complaining about the problem, and get out there and do something about the problem. So I'm speaking to the church. I'm speaking to the pastors. You need to start talking to your congregation. You need to start getting involved in this struggle that is going on in this nation. Because if we ever want to see a change, then we've got to get out there and we've got to do it. Because it was the church It was Christians that got involved in the fight against slavery. It was the church and the Christians that got involved so we can have civil rights in this nation. So the question is, where are you? What are you doing? You say you have the love of God within you. Well, if you have the love of God within you, then prove that you love God by your actions. And I just thank you for listening. I just hope and pray that you have learned something from the video that you have just watched, and I hope that you will get involved and we will stop being on the sidelines and we will raise our voices collectively and bring about a change in this nation.